If your dress speaks respect and your manners shine bright, you're following the Prophet's light. Prophet Muhammad taught us that modesty is key. Dress simply but elegantly, covering appropriately. Men, keep it neat and clean. Women, embrace modesty and grace. And manners, kindness, humility, and politeness should be your daily attire. Treat everyone with respect and a smile. Follow these teachings and you'll embody the essence of Islamic etiquette. Dress well, act better. Volume 7, Book 72, number 674. Narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's apostle said, Allah will not look at the person who drags his garment behind him out of conceit. Volume 7, Book 72, number 675. Narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. The Prophet said Allah will not look on the day of resurrection at the person who drags his garment behind him out of conceit. On that, Abu Bakr said, O Allah's apostle, one side of my izar hangs low if I do not take care of it. The Prophet said, You are not one of those who do that out of conceit. Volume 7, Book 72, number 676, narrated by Abu Bakr. The solar eclipse occurred while we were sitting with the Prophet. He got up dragging his garment on the ground, hurriedly till he reached the mosque. The people turned to the mosque, and he offered a 2-rakat prayer whereupon the eclipse was over, and he traced us and said, The sun and the moon are 2 signs among the signs of Allah, so if you see a thing like this, eclipse, then offer the prayer and invoke Allah till he remove that state. Volume 7, Book 72, number 677, narrated by Abu Juhayfa. I saw Bilal bringing an anza, a small spear, and fixing it in the ground, and then he proclaimed the ikarna of the prayer, and I saw Allah's apostle coming out, wearing a cloak with its sleeves rolled up. He then offered a 2-rakat prayer while facing the anza, and I saw the people and animals passing in front of him beyond the anza. Volume 7, Book 72, number 678, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, The part of an izar which hangs below the ankles is in the fire. Volume 7, Book 72, number 679, narrated by Abu Huraira, Allah's apostle, Allah will not look on the day of resurrection at a person who drags his izar behind him out of pride and arrogance. Volume 7, Book 72, number 680, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet, or Abu Qasim, said, While a man was walking clad in a 2-piece garment and proud of himself with his hair well combed, suddenly Allah made him sink into the earth and he will go on sinking into it till the day of resurrection. Volume 7, Book 72, number 681, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's apostle said, While a man was dragging his izar on the ground behind him, suddenly Allah made him sink into the earth and he will go on sinking into it till the day of resurrection. Volume 7, Book 72, number 682, narrated by Abu Huraira. That he heard the Prophet, narrating as above, none 680. Volume 7, Book 72, number 683, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's apostle said, Whoever drags his clothes on the ground out of pride and arrogance, Allah will not look at him on the day of resurrection. Volume 7, Book 72, number 684. Narrated by Aisha, the wife of the Prophet. The wife of Rifa'a al-Qurazi came to Allah's apostle while I was sitting, and Abu Bakr was also there. She said, O Allah's apostle, I was the wife of Rifa'a and he divorced me irrevocably. Then I married Abdurrahman bin Az-Zubair, who by Allah, O Allah's apostle, has only something like a fringe of a garment, showing the fringe of her veil. Khalid bin Said, who was standing at the door, for he had not been admitted, heard her statement and said, O Abu Bakr, why do you not stop this lady from saying such things openly before Allah's apostle? No, by Allah, Allah's apostle did nothing but smiled. Then he said to the lady, Perhaps you want to return to Rifa'ah? That is impossible unless Abdurrahman consummates his marriage with you. That became the tradition after him. Volume 7, Book 72, number 685, narrated by Ali. The Prophet asked for his rida, put it on, and set out walking. Zayd bin Haritha and I followed him till he reached the house where Harnza bin Abdul Muttalib was present and asked for permission to enter, and they gave us permission. Volume 7, Book 72, number 686, narrated by Ibn Umar. A man asked, O Allah's apostle, what kind of clothes should a muhrim wear? The Prophet said, A muhrim should not wear a shirt, trousers, a hooded cloak, or cuffs, leather socks covering the ankles, unless he cannot get sandals, in which case he should cut the part of the cuff that covers the ankles. Volume 7, Book 72, number 687, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. The Prophet came to visit Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul after he had been put in his grave. The Prophet ordered that Abdullah be taken out. He was taken out and was placed on the knees of the Prophet, who blew his blessed breath on him and dressed the body with his own shirt. And Allah knows better. Volume 7, Book 72, number 688, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. When Abdullah bin Ubdi bin Salul died, his son came to Allah's apostle and said, "O Allah's apostle, give me your shirt so that I may shroud my father's body in it, and please offer a funeral prayer for him and invoke Allah for his forgiveness." The Prophet gave him his shirt and said to him, "Inform us when you finish and the funeral procession is ready, call us." When he had finished, he told the Prophet, and the Prophet proceeded to order his funeral prayers. But Umar stopped him and said, "Didn't Allah forbid you to offer the funeral prayer for the hypocrites when he said, 'Whether you, O Muhammad, ask forgiveness for them or ask not forgiveness for them, and even if you ask forgiveness for them 70 times, Allah will not forgive them.'" 9.80. Then there was revealed, "And never, O Muhammad, pray for any of them that dies, nor stand at his grave." 9.34. Thenceforth, the Prophet did not offer funeral prayers for the hypocrites. Volume 7, Book 72, number 689, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle has set forth an example for a miser and a charitable person by comparing them to two men wearing two iron cloaks, and their hands are raised to their breasts and necks. Whenever the charitable man tries to give a charitable gift, his iron cloak expands till it becomes so wide that it will cover his fingertips and obliterate his tracks. And whenever the miser wants to give a charitable gift, his cloak becomes very tight over him, and every ring gets stuck to its place. Abu Huraira added, "I saw Allah's apostle putting his finger in the chest pocket of his shirt like that if you but saw him trying to widen the opening of his shirt, but it did not widen." Volume 7, Book 72, number 690, narrated by Al-Mughira bin Shuba. The Prophet went to answer the call of nature, and when he returned, I met him with water, and he performed the ablution while he was wearing a sham cloak. He rinsed his mouth, put the water in his nose and blew it out, washed his face and tried to take his hands out of his sleeves, but they were too narrow. So he took out his hands from under his chest and washed them, and then passed his wet hands over his head and cuffs, leather socks. Volume 7, Book 72, number 691, narrated by Al-Mughira. One night I was with the Prophet on a journey. He asked me, "Have you got water with you?" I replied, "Yes." So he got down from his she-camel and went away till he disappeared in the darkness of the night. Then he came back and I poured water for him from the pot, for the ablution. He washed his face and hands while he was wearing a woolen cloak, the sleeves of which were narrow, so he could not take his arms out of it. So he took them out from underneath the cloak. Then he washed his forearms and passed his wet hands over his head. Then I tried to take off his cuffs, but he said, "Leave them, for I have performed ablution before putting them on." And so he passed his wet hands over them. Volume 7, Book 72, number 692, narrated by Al-Miswar bin Makrama. Allah's apostle distributed some kabbas, but he did not give anything to Makrama. Makrama said to me, "O my son, let us go to Allah's apostle." So I proceeded with him, and he said, "Go in and call him or me." So I called the Prophet for him. The Prophet came out to him, wearing one of those kabbas, and said to Makrama, "I have kept this for you." Makrama looked at it and said, "Makrama is satisfied now." Volume 7, Book 72, number 693. Narrated by Uqba bin Amir, a silken farouj was presented to Allah's apostle, and he put it on and offered the prayer in it. When he finished the prayer, he took it off violently as if he disliked it and said, "This garment does not befit those who fear Allah." Volume 7, Book 72, number 694, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. A man said, "O Allah's apostle, what type of clothes should a muhrim wear?" Allah's apostle replied, "Do not wear shirts, turbans, trousers, hooded cloaks, or cuffs. But if someone cannot get sandals, then he can wear cuffs after cutting them short below the ankles. Do not wear clothes touched by saffron or wars, two kinds of perfumes." Volume 7, Book 72, number 695, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, "Whoever cannot get an izar can wear trousers, and whoever cannot wear sandals can wear cuffs." Volume 7, Book 72, number 696, narrated by Abdullah. A man got up and said, "O Allah's apostle, what do you order us to wear when we assume the state of Ihram?" The Prophet replied, "Do not wear shirts, trousers, turbans, hooded cloaks, or cuffs, but if a man has no sandals, he can wear cuffs after cutting them short below the ankles. And do not wear clothes touched with perfumes of saffron or wars." Volume 7, Book 72, number 697, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. The Prophet said, "A muhrim should not wear a shirt, a turban, trousers, hooded cloaks, a garment touched with perfumes of saffron or wars, or cuffs, except if one has no sandals, in which case he should cut short the cuffs below the ankles." Volume 7, Book 72, number 698, narrated by Aisha. Some Muslim men emigrated to Ethiopia, whereupon Abu Bakr also prepared himself for the emigration, but the Prophet said to him, "Wait, for I hope that Allah will allow me also to emigrate." Abu Bakr said, "Let my father and mother be sacrificed for you. Do you hope that emigration?" The Prophet said, "Yes." So Abu Bakr waited to accompany the Prophet and fed 2 she-camels he had on the leaves of as-samur tree regularly for 4 months. One day while we were sitting in our house at midday, someone said to Abu Bakr, "Here is Allah's apostle, coming with his head and a part of his face covered with a cloth covering at an hour he never used to come to us." Abu Bakr said, "Let my father and mother be sacrificed for you, O Prophet. An urgent matter must have brought you here at this hour." The Prophet came and asked the permission to enter, and he was allowed. The Prophet entered and said to Abu Bakr, "Let those who are with you go out." Abu Bakr replied, "There is no stranger, they are your family. Let my father be sacrificed for you, O Allah's apostle." The Prophet said, "I have been allowed to leave Mecca." Abu Bakr said, "I shall accompany you, O Allah's apostles. Let my father be sacrificed for you." The Prophet said, "Yes," Abu Bakr said, "O Allah's apostles, let my father be sacrificed for you. Take one of these 2 she-camels of mine." The Prophet said, "I will take it only after paying its price." So we prepared their baggage and put their journey food in a leather bag. And Asma bint Abu Bakr cut a piece of her girdle and tied the mouth of the leather bag with it. That is why she was called Dot-Nitakaln. Then the Prophet and Abu Bakr went to a cave in a mountain called Thawr and remained there for 3 nights. Abdullah bin Abu Bakr, who was a young intelligent man, used to stay with them at night and leave before dawn so that in the morning he would with the Quraysh at Mecca as if he had spent the night among them. If he heard of any plot contrived by the Quraysh against the Prophet and Abu Bakr, he would understand it and return to, inform them of it when it became dark. Amir bin Fuhaira, the freed slave of Abu Bakr, used to graze a flock of milch sheep for them, and he used to take those sheep to them when an hour had passed after the Isha prayer. They would sleep soundly till Amir bin Fuhaira awakened them when it was still dark. He used to do that in each of those 3 nights. Volume 7, Book 72, number 699, narrated by Anas bin Malik. In the year of the conquest of Mecca, the Prophet entered Mecca, wearing a helmet on his head. Volume 7, Book 72, number 700, narrated by Anas bin Malik. Once I was walking with Allah's apostle, and he was wearing a nadram bird with thick margin. A Bedouin followed him and pulled his bird so violently that I noticed the side of the shoulder of Allah's apostle affected by the margin of the bird because of that violent pull. The Bedouin said, "O Muhammad, give me some of Allah's wealth which is with you." Allah's apostle turned and looked at him, and smiling, he ordered that he be given something. Volume 7, Book 72, number 701, narrated by Abu Hazim Shal bin Saad said, "A lady came with a burda." Saul then asked the people, "Do you know what burda is?" Somebody said, "Yes. It is a shamla with a woven border." Saul added, "The lady said, 'O Allah's apostle, I have knitted this burda with my own hands for you to wear it.' Allah's apostle took it, and he was in need of it. Allah's apostle came out to us, and he was wearing it as an izar. A man from the people felt it and said, 'O Allah's apostle, give it to me to wear.' The Prophet said, 'Yes.' Then he sat there for some time, and when he went to his house, he folded it and sent it to him. The people said to that man, 'You have not done a right thing. You asked him for it, though you know that he does not put down anybody's request.' The man said, 'By Allah, I have only asked him so that it may be my shroud when I die.' Saul added, 'Late it was his shroud.' Volume 7, Book 72, number 702, narrated by Abu Huraira. I heard Allah's apostle saying, 'From among my followers, a group, 70,000, will enter paradise without being asked for their accounts. Their faces will be shining like the moon.'" Ukasha bin Musin al-Asadi got up, lifting his covering sheet, and said, "O Allah's apostle, invoke Allah for me that he may include me with them." The Prophet said, "O Allah, make him from them." Then another man from Al-Ansar got up and said, "O Allah's apostle, invoke Allah for me that he may include me with them." On that, Allah's apostle said, "Ukasha has anticipated you." Volume 7, Book 72, number 703, narrated by Qatada. I asked Anas, what kind of clothes was most beloved to the Prophet? He replied, "The hibra, a kind of Yemenese cloth." Volume 7, Book 72, number 704, narrated by Anas bin Malik. The most beloved garment to the Prophet to wear was the hibra, a kind of Yemenese cloth. Volume 7, Book 72, number 705, narrated by Aisha, the wife of the Prophet. When Allah's apostle died, he was covered with a hibra bird, green square decorated garment. Volume 7, Book 72, number 706, narrated by Aisha and Abdullah bin Abbas. When the disease of Allah's apostle got aggravated, he covered his face with a camisa, but when he became short of breath, he would remove it from his face and say, "It is like that. May Allah curse the Jews Christians because they took the graves of their prophets as places of worship." By that, he warned his follower of imitating them, by doing that which they did. Volume 7, Book 72, number 707, narrated by Abu Burda. Aisha brought out to us a kisa and an izar and said, "The Prophet died while wearing these two." Kisa, a square black piece of woolen cloth. Izar, a sheet cloth garment covering the lower half of the body. Volume 7, Book 72, number 708. Narrated by Aisha. Allah's apostle offered prayer while he was wearing a kamisa of his that had printed marks. He looked at its marks, and when he finished prayer, he said, "Take this kamisa of mine to Abu Jam, for it has just now diverted my attention from my prayer, and bring to me the Anbijaniya, a plain thick sheet, of Abu Jam bin Hutaifa bin Ghanim, who belonged to Bani Adi bin Kab." Volume 7, Book 72, number 709. Narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet had forbidden A. The mulamasa and munabada, bargains, B. The offering of two prayers, one after the morning compulsory prayer till the sun rises, and the others after the Asr prayer till the sun sets. C. He also forbade that one should sit wearing one garment, nothing of which covers his private parts, D. And prevent them from exposure to the sky. E. He also forbade ishtimal as-sama. Volume 7, Book 72, number 710. Narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. Allah's apostle forbade two ways of wearing clothes and two kinds of dealings. A. He forbade the dealings of the mulamasa and the munabadha. In the mulamasa transaction, the buyer just touches the garment he wants to buy at night or by daytime, and that touch would oblige him to buy it. In the munabadha, one man throws his garment at another, and the latter throws his at the former, and the barter is complete and valid without examining the two objects or being satisfied with them. B. The two ways of wearing clothes were ishtimal as-sama, i.e., to cover one's shoulder with one's garment and leave the other bare, and the other way was to wrap oneself with a garment while one was sitting in such a way that nothing of that garment would cover one's private part. Volume 7, Book 72, number 711, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle forbade two types of dresses. A. To sit in an itaba posture in one garment, nothing of which covers his private parts. B. To cover one side of his body with one garment and leave the other side bare. The Prophet also forbade the mulamasa and munabadha. Volume 7, Book 72, number 712, narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. The Prophet forbade ishtimal as-sama, and that a man should sit in an itaba posture in one garment, nothing of which covers his private parts. Volume 7, Book 72, number 713, narrated by Khalid bint Khalid. The Prophet was given some clothes including a black kamisa. The Prophet said, "To whom shall we give this to wear?" The people kept silent, whereupon the Prophet said, "Fetch Khalid for me." Khalid was brought carried, as I was small girl at that time. The Prophet took the kamisa in his hands and made me wear it and said, "May you live so long that your dress will wear out and you will mend it many times." On the kamisa there were some green or pale designs. The Prophet saw these designs and said, "O Khalid, this is Sana." Sana in an Ethiopian word meaning beautiful. Volume 7, Book 72, number 714, narrated by Anas, when Sulaim gave birth to a child. She said to me, "O Anas, watch this boy carefully and do not give him anything to eat or drink until you have taken him to the Prophet tomorrow morning for the tonic." So the next morning I took the child to the Prophet, who was sitting in a garden and was wearing a Huraithia kamisa, and was branding the she-camel on which he had come during the conquest of Mecca. Volume 7, Book 72, number 715, narrated by Ikrimah. Rifa'a divorced his wife, whereupon Abdurrahman bin Az-Zubair al-Qurazi married her. Aisha said that the lady came, wearing a green veil, and complained to her, Aisha, of her husband, and showed her a green spot on her skin caused by beating. It was the habit of ladies to support each other, so when Allah's apostle came, Aisha said, "I have not seen any woman suffering as much as the believing women. Look, her skin is greener than her clothes." When Abdurrahman heard that his wife had gone to the Prophet, he came with his two sons from another wife. She said, "By Allah, I have done no wrong to him, but he is impotent and is as useless to me as this," holding and showing the fringe of her garment. Abdurrahman said, "By Allah, O Allah's apostle, she has told a lie. I am very strong and can satisfy her, but she is disobedient and wants to go back to Rifa'a." Allah's apostle said to her, "If that is your intention, then know that it is unlawful for you to remarry Rifa'a unless Abdurrahman has had sexual intercourse with you." Then the Prophet saw two boys with Abdurrahman and asked him, "Are these your sons?" On that, Abdurrahman said, "Yes." The Prophet said, "You claim what you claim, that is, that he is impotent. But by Allah, these boys resemble him as a crow resembles a crow." Volume 7, Book 72, number 716, narrated by Sad. On the day of the Battle of Uhud, on the right and on the left of the Prophet were two men wearing white clothes, and I had neither seen them before, nor did I see them afterwards. Volume 7, Book 72, number 717, narrated by Abu Dar. I came to the Prophet while he was wearing white clothes and sleeping. Then I went back to him again after he had got up from his sleep. He said, nobody says, none has the right to be worshipped but Allah. And then later on he dies while believing in that, except that he will enter paradise. I said, even he had committed illegal sexual intercourse and theft. I said, even if he had committed illegal sexual intercourse and theft? He said, even if he had committed illegal sexual intercourse and theft? I said, even he had committed illegal sexual intercourse and thefts. He said, even if he had committed illegal sexual intercourse and theft, in spite of the Abu Dar's dislikeness. Abu Abdullah said, this is at the time of death or before it if one repents and regrets and says, none has the right to be worshipped but Allah. He will be forgiven his sins. Volume 7, Book 72, number 718, narrated by Aba Uthman an-Nadi. While we were with Utbah bin Farqad at Adharbijan, there came Umar's letter indicating that Allah's apostle had forbidden the use of silk except this much. Then he pointed with his index and middle fingers. To our knowledge, by that he meant embroidery. Volume 7, Book 72, number 719, narrated by Abu Uthman. While we were at Adharbijan, Umar wrote to us, Allah's apostle forbade wearing silk except this much. Then the Prophet approximated his 2 fingers, index and middle fingers, to illustrate that, to us. Zuhair, the sub-narrator, raised up his middle and index fingers. Volume 7, Book 72, number 720, narrated by Abu Uthman, while we were with Utbah. Umar wrote to us, the Prophet said, there is none who wears silk in this world except that he will wear nothing of it in the hereafter. Abu Uthman pointed out with his middle and index fingers. Volume 7, Book 72, number 721, narrated by Abu Uthman, as above 719. Volume 7, Book 72, number 722, narrated by Ibn Abi Layla. While Hudhaifa was at Al-Madain, he asked for water, whereupon the chief of the village brought him water in a silver cup. Hudhaifa threw it at him and said, I have thrown it only because I have forbidden him to use it, but he does not stop using it. Allah's apostle said, gold, silver, silk, and dibaj, a kind of silk, are for them, unbelievers, in this world, and for you, Muslims, in the hereafter. Volume 7, Book 72, number 723, narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet said, whoever wears silk in this world shall not wear it in the hereafter. Volume 7, Book 72, number 724, narrated by Thabit. I heard Ibn az-Zubair delivering a sermon saying, Muhammad said, whoever wears silk in this world shall not wear it in the hereafter. Volume 7, Book 72, number 725, narrated by Ibn az-Zubair. I heard Umar saying, the Prophet said, whoever wears silk in this world shall not wear it in the hereafter. Volume 7, Book 72, number 726, narrated by Umar bin al-Khattab. Allah's apostle said, none wears silk in this world, but he who will have no share in the hereafter. Volume 7, Book 72, number 727, narrated by Al-Bara. The Prophet was given a silk garment as a gift, and we started touching it with our hands and admiring it. On that, the Prophet said, do you wonder at this? We said, yes. He said, the handkerchiefs of Sa'd bin Mu'ad in paradise are better than this. Volume 7, Book 72, number 728, narrated by Hudhaifa. The Prophet forbade us to drink out of gold and silver vessels, or eat in it, and also forbade the wearing of silk and dibaj or sitting on it. Volume 7, Book 72, number 729, narrated by Ibn Azib. The Prophet forbade us to use the red mayathir and to use al-kasi. Volume 7, Book 72, number 730, narrated by Anas. The Prophet allowed Az-Zubair and Abdurrahman to wear silk because they were suffering from an itch. Volume 7, Book 72, number 731, narrated by Ali bin Abi Talib. The Prophet gave me a silk suit. I went out wearing it, but seeing the signs of anger on his face, I tore it and distributed it among my wives. Volume 7, Book 72, number 732, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. Umar saw a silk suit being sold, so he said, O Allah's apostle, why don't you buy it so that you may wear it when delegates come to you and also on Fridays? The Prophet said, this is worn only by him who has no share in the hereafter. Afterwards, the Prophet sent to Umar a silk suit suitable for wearing. Umar said to the Prophet, you have given it to me to wear, yet I have heard you saying about it what you said. The Prophet said, I sent it to you so that you might either sell it or give it to somebody else to wear. Volume 7, Book 72, number 733, narrated by Anas bin Malik, that he had seen Kulthum, the daughter of Allah's apostle, wearing a red silk garment. Volume 7, Book 72, number 734, narrated by Ibn Abbas. For 1 year I wanted to ask Umar about the 2 women who helped each other against the Prophet, but I was afraid of him. One day he dismounted his riding animal and went among the trees of Arak to answer the call of nature, and when he returned I asked him, and he said, They were Aisha and Hafsa. Then he added, "We never used to give significance to ladies in the days of the pre-Islamic period of ignorance. But when Islam came and Allah mentioned their rights, we used to give them their rights but did not allow them to interfere in our affairs. Once there was some dispute between me and my wife, and she answered me back in a loud voice. I said to her, 'Strange, you can retort in this way?' She said, 'Yes. Do you say this to me while your daughter troubles Allah's apostle?' So I went to Hafsa and said to her, 'I warn you not to disobey Allah and his apostle.' I first went to Hafsa and then to Salama and told her the same. She said to me, 'O Umar, it surprises me that you interfere in our affairs so much that you would poke your nose even into the affairs of Allah's apostle and his wives.' So she rejected my advice. There was an Ansari man. Whenever he was absent from Allah's apostle and I was present there, I used to convey to him what had happened on that day, and when I was absent and he was present there, he used to convey to me what had happened as regards news from Allah's apostle. During that time, all the rulers of the nearby lands had surrendered to Allah's apostle except the king of Ghassan in Sham, and we were afraid that he might attack us. All of a sudden the Ansari came and said, 'A great event has happened.' I asked him, 'What is it? Has the Ghassani king come?' He said, 'Greater than that, Allah's apostle has divorced his wives.' I went to them and found all of them weeping in their dwellings, and the prophet had ascended to an upper room of his. At the door of the room there was a slave to whom I went and said, 'Ask the permission for me to enter.' He admitted me, and I entered to see the prophet lying on a mat that had left its imprint on his side. Under his head there was a leather pillow stuffed with palm fires. Behold, there were some hides hanging there and some grass for tanning. Then I mentioned what I had said to Hafsa and Salama, and what reply Salama had given me. Allah's apostle smiled and stayed there for 29 days and then came down. See Hadith number 648, Vol. 3 for details. Volume 7, Book 72, number 735, narrated by Salama. One night the Prophet woke up saying, 'None has the right to be worshipped but Allah. How many afflictions have been sent down tonight, and how many treasures have been sent down, disclosed. Who will go and wake up, for prayers, the lady dwellers of these rooms? Many well-dressed people, in this world, will be naked on the day of resurrection.' Volume 7, Book 72, number 736, narrated by Khalid bint Khalid. Some clothes were presented to Allah's apostle as a gift, and there was a black camisa with it. The Prophet asked his companions, 'To whom do you suggest we give this camisa?' The people kept quiet. Then he said, 'Bring me Khalid.' So I was brought to him, and he dressed me with it with his own hands and said twice, 'May you live so long that you will wear out many garments.' He then started looking at the embroidery of that camisa and said, 'O Khalid, this is Sana.' Sana in Ethiopian language means beautiful. Ishaq, a sub-narrator, said, 'A woman of my family had told me that she had seen the camisa worn by Khalid.' Volume 7, Book 72, number 737, narrated by Anas. The Prophet forbade men to use saffron. Volume 7, Book 72, number 738, narrated by Ibn Umar. The Prophet forbade Murims to wear clothes dyed with wars or saffron. Volume 7, Book 72, number 739, narrated by Al-Bara. The Prophet was of a modest height. I saw him wearing a red suit, and I did not see anything better than him. Volume 7, Book 72, number 740, narrated by Al-Bara. The Prophet ordered us to observe 7 things: to visit the sick, follow funeral processions, say, 'May Allah bestow his mercy on you.' To the sneezer, if he says, 'Praise be to Allah,' he forbade us to wear silk, dibaj, kasi, and istibark, various kinds of silken clothes, or to use red mayathir, silk cushions. See Hadith, num 253a, Vol 8, Volume 7, Book 72, number 741, narrated by Sayyid Abu Maslama. I asked Anas bin Malik, did the Prophet used to offer the prayers with his shoes on? He said yes. Volume 7, Book 72, number 742, narrated by Sayyid al-Makburi. Ubay bin Jurayj said to Abdullah bin Umar, 'I see you doing 4 things which are not done by your friends.' Ibn Umar said, 'What are they, O Ibn Jurayj?' He said, 'I see that you do not touch except the 2 Yemenite corners of the Kaaba while performing the tawaf, and I see you wearing the sabtiya shoes, and I see you dyeing your hair with sufra, and I see that when you are in Mecca, the people assume the state of Ihram on seeing the crescent on the first day of Dhul Hijjah, while you do not assume the state of Ihram till the day of Tarwiyah, 8th Dhul Hijjah.' Abdullah bin Umar said to him, 'As for the corners of the Kaaba, I have not seen Allah's apostle touching except the 2 Yemenite corners. As for the sabtiya shoes, I saw Allah's apostle wearing leather shoes that had no hair, and he used to perform the ablution while wearing them. Therefore, I like to wear such shoes. As regards dyeing with sufra, I saw Allah's apostle dyeing his hair with it, so I like to dye my hair with it. As regards the crescent of Dhul Hijjah, I have not seen Allah's apostle assuming the state of Ihram till his she-camel set out on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah.' Volume 7, Book 72, number 743. Narrated by Ibn Umar. Allah's apostle forbade that a muhrim should wear clothes dyed with saffron or wars and said, "Whoever has no shoes can put on cuffs after cutting it below the ankles." Volume 7, Book 72, number 744. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, "Whoever has no izar waist sheet can wear trousers, and whoever has no sandals can wear cuffs, but cut them short below the ankles." Volume 7, Book 72, number 745. Narrated by Aisha. The Prophet used to like starting from the right in performing ablution, combing his hair, and putting on his shoes. Volume 7, Book 72, number 746. Narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, "None of you should walk wearing one shoe only. He should either put on both shoes or put on no shoes whatsoever." Volume 7, Book 72, number 747. Narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, "If you want to put on your shoes, put on the right shoe first. And if you want to take them off, take the left one first. Let the right shoe be the first to be put on and the last to be taken off." Volume 7, Book 72, number 748. Narrated by Anas. The sandal of the Prophet had 2 straps. Volume 7, Book 72, number 749. Narrated by Isaiah bin Taman. Anas bin Malik brought out for us 2 sandals having 2 straps. Thabit al-Banani said, "These were the sandals of the Prophet." Volume 7, Book 72, number 750. Narrated by Abu Juhayfa. I came to the Prophet while he was inside a red leather tent, and I saw Bilal taking the remaining water of the ablution of the Prophet, and the people were taking of that water and rubbing it on their faces, and whoever could not get anything of it would share the moisture of the hand of his companion and then rub it on his face. Volume 7, Book 72, number 751. Narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet called for the Ansar and gathered them in a leather tent. Volume 7, Book 72, number 752. Narrated by Aisha. The Prophet used to construct a loom with a hasir at night in order to pray therein, and during the day he used to spread it out and sit on it. The people started coming to the Prophet at night to offer the prayer behind him. When their number increased, the Prophet faced them and said, "O people, do only those good deeds which you can do, for Allah does not get tired of giving reward till you get tired, and the best deeds to Allah are the incessant ones though they were few." Volume 7, Book 72, number 753. Narrated by Al-Bara bin Azib. The Prophet forbade us to use 7 things. He forbade using gold rings, silk, istabrak, dibaj, red myathir, al-kasi, and silver utensils. He ordered us to do 7 other things: to pay a visit to the sick, to follow funeral processions, to say, "May Allah be merciful to you," to a sneezer if he says, "Praise be to Allah," to return greetings, to accept invitations, to help others to fulfill their oaths, and to help the oppressed ones. Volume 7, Book 72, number 754. Narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet forbade the wearing of a gold ring. Volume 7, Book 72, number 755. Narrated by Abdullah. Allah's apostle wore a gold or silver ring and placed its stone towards the palm of his hand. The people also started wearing gold rings like it, but when the Prophet saw them wearing such rings, he threw away that golden ring and then wore a silver ring. Volume 7, Book 72, number 756. Narrated by Ibn Umar. Allah's apostle wore a gold ring or a silver ring and placed its stone towards the palm of his hand and had the name Muhammad, the apostle of Allah, engraved on it. The people also started wearing gold rings like it, but when the Prophet saw them wearing such rings, he threw away his own ring and said, "I will never wear it," and then wore a silver ring, whereupon the people too started wearing silver rings. Ibn Umar added, "After the Prophet Abu Bakr wore the ring, and then Umar and then Uthman wore it till it fell in the Aras well from Uthman." Bin Umar, Allah's apostle, wore a gold ring, then he threw it and said, "I will never wear it." The people also threw their gold rings. Volume 7, Book 72, number 757, narrated by Anas bin Malik, that he saw a silver ring on the hand of Allah's apostle for one day only. Then the people had silver rings made for themselves and wore it. On that, Allah's apostle threw away their rings as well. For the details of this hadith, see Fateh al-Bari, Vol 12, page 438. Volume 7, Book 72, number 758. Narrated by Humayd. Anas was asked, "Did the Prophet wear a ring?" Anas said, "Once he delayed the Isha prayer till midnight. Then he came, facing us, as if am now looking at the glitter of his ring, and said, 'The people have offered their prayers and slept, but you have been in prayer as you have been waiting for it.'" Volume 7, Book 72, number 759. Narrated by Anas. The ring of the Prophet was of silver, and its stone was of silver too. Volume 7, Book 72, number 760. Narrated by Saul. A woman came to the Prophet and said, I have come to present myself to you, for marriage. She kept standing for a long period, during which period the prophet looked at her carefully. When she stayed for a long period, a man said to the prophet, If you are not in need of her, then marry her to me. The prophet said, Have you got anything to give her, as mar? The man said no. The prophet said, Go to your house and search for something. The man went and came back to say, By Allah, I could not find anything. The prophet said, Go again and search for something, even if it be an iron ring. He went again and came back saying, No, by Allah, I could not get even an iron ring. The man had only an izar and had no rida, upper garment. He said, I will give her my izar as mar. On that the prophet said, Your izar, if she wears it, nothing of it will remain on you, and if you wear it, nothing of it will be on her. The man went aside and sat down. When the prophet saw him leaving, after a while, he called back and asked, How much Quran do you know, by heart? He said, I know such and such surahs, naming some surahs. The prophet said, I marry her to you for the amount of Quran you know, by heart. Volume 7, Book 72, number 761, narrated by Anas bin Malik. Allah's apostle wanted to write a letter to a group of people or some non-Arabs. It was said to him, They do not accept any letter unless it is stamped. So the prophet had a silver ring made for himself, and on it was engraved, Muhammad, the apostle of Allah. As if I am now looking at the glitter of the ring on the finger or in the palm of the prophet. Volume 7, Book 72, number 762, narrated by Ibn Umar. Allah's apostle had a silver ring made for himself, and it was worn by him on his hand. Afterwards it was worn by Abu Bakr, and then by Umar, and then by Uthman till it fell in the air as well. On that ring was engraved, Muhammad, the apostle of Allah. Volume 7, Book 72, number 763, narrated by Anas. The prophet got a ring made for himself and said, I have got a ring made for myself, and engraved a certain engraving on it, so none of you should get such an engraving on his ring. I saw the glitter of the ring on his little finger. Volume 7, Book 72, number 764, narrated by Anas bin Malik. When the prophet intended to write to the Byzantines, it was said to him, Those people do not read your letter unless it is stamped. So the prophet took a silver ring and got Muhammad, the apostle of Allah, engraved on it, as if I am now looking at its glitter in his hand. Volume 7, Book 72, number 765, narrated by Abdullah. The prophet had a golden ring made for himself, and when he wore it, he used to turn its stone toward the palm of his hand. So the people too had gold made for themselves. The prophet then ascended the pulpit, and after glorifying and praising Allah, he said, I had it made for me, but now I will never wear it again. He threw it away, and then the people threw away their rings too. Juwariya, a sub-narrator, said, I think Anas said that the prophet was wearing the ring in his right hand. Volume 7, Book 72, number 766, narrated by Anas bin Malik. Allah's apostle took a silver ring and had Muhammad the apostle of Allah engraved on it. The prophet then said to us, I have a silver ring with Muhammad, the apostle of Allah, engraved on it, so none of you should have the same engraving on his ring. Volume 7, Book 72, number 767, narrated by Anas, that when Abu Bakr became the caliph, he wrote a letter to him and stamped it with the prophet's ring, and the engraving of the ring was in 3 lines, Muhammad in 1 line, apostle in another line, and Allah in a 3rd line. Anas added, The ring of the prophet was in his hand, and after him, in Abu Bakr's hand, and then in Umar's hand after Abu Bakr. When Uthman was the caliph, once he was sitting at the well of Aris. He removed the ring from his hand, and while he was trifling with it, dropped into the well. We kept on going to the well with Uthman for 3 days looking for the ring, and finally the well was drained, but the ring was not found. Volume 7, Book 72, number 768, narrated by Ibn Abbas. I offered the Eid prayer with the Prophet, and he offered prayer before the khutbah, sermon. Ibn Abbas added, After the prayer the Prophet came towards the rows of the women and ordered them to give alms, and the women started putting their big and small rings in the garment of Bilal. Volume 7, Book 72, number 769, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet came out on the day of Eid and offered a 2-rakat prayer, and he did not pray any rakah before it, nor after it. Then he went towards the women and ordered them to give alms. The women started donating their earring and necklaces. Volume 7, Book 72, number 770, narrated by Aisha. A necklace belonging to Asma was lost, and the Prophet sent men in its search. The time for the prayer became due, and they were without ablution, and they could not find water. Therefore they prayed without ablution. They mentioned that to the Prophet. Then Allah revealed the verse of Tayammum. Aisha added that she had borrowed the necklace from Asma. Volume 7, Book 72, number 771, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet offered a 2 rakat prayer on Eid day and he did not offer any nawafil prayer before or after it. He then went towards the women, and Bilal was accompanying him, and ordered them to give alms, and so the women started giving their earrings, etc. Volume 7, Book 72, number 772, narrated by Abu Huraira. I was with Allah's Apostle in one of the markets of Medina. He left the market, and so did I. Then he asked thrice, "Where is the small child?" Then he said, "Call Al-Hasan bin Ali." So Al-Hasan bin Ali got up and started walking with a necklace of beads around his neck. The Prophet stretched his hand out like this, and Al-Hasan did the same. The Prophet embraced him and said, "Zero Allah, I love him, so please love him and love those who love him." Since Allah's Apostle said that, nothing has been dearer to me than Al-Hasan. Volume 7, Book 72, number 773, narrated by Ibn Abbas. Allah's Apostle cursed those men who are in the similitude assume the manners of women, and those women who are in the similitude assume the manners of men. Volume 7, Book 72, number 774, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet cursed effeminate men. Those men who are in the similitude assume the manners of women, and those women who assume the manners of men, and he said, "Turn them out of your houses." The Prophet turned out such and such man, and Umar turned out such and such woman. Volume 7, Book 72, number 775, narrated by Salama. That once the Prophet was in her house, and an effeminate man was there too. The effeminate man said to Abdullah, Salama's brother, "Zero Abdullah, if Taif should be conquered tomorrow, I recommend you the daughter of Gailan, for she is so fat that she has 4 curves in the front of her belly and 8 at the back." So the Prophet said to his wives, "These effeminate men should not enter upon you, your houses." Volume 7, Book 72, number 776, narrated by Ibn Umar. The Prophet said, "To get the mustaches cut short is characteristic of the fitra." Volume 7, Book 72, number 777, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's Apostle said, 5 practices are characteristics of the fitra: circumcision, shaving the pubic region, clipping the nails and cutting the mustaches short. Volume 7, Book 72, number 778, narrated by Ibn Umar. Allah's Apostle said, to shave the pubic hair, to clip the nails and to cut the mustaches short are characteristics of the fitra. Volume 7, Book 72, number 779, narrated by Abu Huraira. I heard the Prophet saying, 5 practices are characteristics of the fitra: circumcision, shaving the pubic hair, cutting the mustaches short, clipping the nails, and depilating the hair of the armpits. Volume 7, Book 72, number 780, narrated by Nafi ibn Umar said, the Prophet said, "Do the opposite of what the pagans do, keep the beards and cut the mustaches short." Whenever Ibn Umar performed the Hajj or Umrah, he used to hold his beard with his hand and cut whatever mustaches. Ibn Umar used to cut his mustache so short that the whiteness of his skin, above the upper lip, was visible, and he used to cut the hair between his mustaches and his beard. Volume 7, Book 72, number 781, narrated by Ibn Umar. Allah's Apostle said, "Cut the mustaches short and leave the beard as it is." Volume 7, Book 72, number 782, narrated by Muhammad bin Sirin. I asked Anas, "Did the Prophet dye his hair?" Anas replied, "The Prophet did not have except a few gray hairs." Volume 7, Book 72, number 783, narrated by Thabit. Anas was asked whether the Prophet used a hair dye or not. Anas replied, "The Prophet had not enough gray hair to dye. I could even count the white gray hairs oil his beard ill would." Volume 7, Book 72, number 784, narrated by Isra'i. Uthman bin Abdullah bin Mawhab said, "My people sent me with a bowl of water to Salama." Israel approximated 3 fingers, indicating the small size of the container in which there was some hair of the Prophet. Uthman added, if any person suffered from evil eye or some other disease, he would send a vessel containing water to Salama. I looked into the container that held the hair of the Prophet and saw a few red hairs in it. Volume 7, Book 72, number 785, narrated by Uthman bin Abdullah bin Mawhab. I went to Salama and she brought out for us some of the dyed hair of the Prophet. Ibn Mawhab also said that Salama had shown him the red hair of the Prophet. Volume 7, Book 72, number 786, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, "Jews and Christians do not dye their hair, so you should do the opposite of what they do." Volume 7, Book 72, number 787, narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet was neither conspicuously tall nor short, neither very white nor tawny. His hair was neither much curled nor very straight. Allah sent him as an apostle at the age of 40, and after that, he stayed for 10 years in Mecca, and for 10 more years in Medina. Allah took him unto him at the age of 60, and he scarcely had 10 white hairs on his head and in his beard. Volume 7, Book 72, number 788, narrated by Al-Bara. I did not see anybody in a red cloak looking more handsome than the Prophet, narrated Malik. The hair of the Prophet used to hang near his shoulders. Narrated Shuba. The hair of the Prophet used to hang down to the earlobes. Volume 7, Book 72, number 789, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's apostle said, "Today I saw myself in a dream near the Kaaba. I saw a whitish-brown man, the handsomest of all brown men you might ever see. He had the most beautiful lima, hair hanging down to the earlobes, you might ever see. He had combed it and it was dripping water, and he was performing the tawaf around the Kaaba leaning on 2 men, or on the shoulders of 2 men. El asked, 'Who is this?' It was said, 'Messiah, the son of Mary.' Suddenly I saw a curly-haired man, blind in the right eye which looked like a protruding out grape. I asked, 'Who is this?' It was said, 'He is Messiah ad-Dajjal.' Volume 7, Book 72, number 790, narrated by Anas. The hair of the Prophet used to hang down up to his shoulders. Volume 7, Book 72, number 790, narrated by Anas. The head hair of the Prophet used to hang down to his shoulders. Volume 7, Book 72, number 791, narrated by Qatada. Asked Anas bin Malik about the hair of Allah's apostle. He said, "The hair of Allah's apostle was neither much straight nor much curly, and it used to hang down till between his shoulders and his earlobes." Volume 7, Book 72, number 792, narrated by Anas. The Prophet had big hands, and I have never seen anybody like him after him. The hair of the Prophet was wavy, neither curly nor straight. Volume 7, Book 72, number 793, narrated by Anas. The Prophet had big hands and feet, and I have not seen anybody like him, neither before nor after him, and his palms were soft. Volume 7, Book 72, number 794, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet had big feet and a good-looking face, and I have not seen anybody like him after him. Narrated Anas. The Prophet had big feet and hands. Narrated Anas or Jabir bin Abdullah. The Prophet had big hands and feet, and I have not seen anybody like him after him. Volume 7, Book 72, number 795, narrated by Mujahid. We were with Ibn Abbas and the people mentioned ad-Dajjal. Someone said, "The word kafir, unbeliever, is written in between his, ad-Dajjal's, eyes." Ibn Abbas said, "I have not heard the Prophet saying this, but he said, 'As regards Abraham, he looks like your companion,' that is the Prophet Muhammad. And as regards Moses, he is a brown, curly-haired man riding a camel, and reined with a strong jute rope, as if lamb now looking at him getting down in the valley and saying, 'Labak.'" Volume 7, Book 72, number 796, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. I heard Umar saying, "Whoever braids his hair should shave it, on finishing Laram. You'd better not do something like Talbid." Ibn Umar used to say, "I saw Allah's apostle with his hair stuck together with gum." Volume 7, Book 72, number 797, narrated by Ibn Umar. I heard Allah's apostle while he was in the state of Laram and his hair was stuck together with gum, saying, "Labayik, Allahumma labayik, labayik la shanka laka labayik. In alhamda wa nimata laka wal mulk, la shanka lak." He did not add anything to those words. See Hadith num 621 Vol 2, Volume 7, Book 72, number 798, narrated by Hafsa, the wife of the Prophet. I said, "O Allah's apostle, why have the people finished their Ihram after performing the Umrah, while you have not finished your Laram after your Umrah?" He said, "I have done talbid of my hair, and have decorated my hadis with garlands, so I shall not finish my Laram till I'll have slaughtered my hadi, animal for sacrifice." Volume 7, Book 72, number 799, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet used to copy the people of the scriptures in matters in which there was no order from Allah. The people of the scripture used to let their hair hang down, while the pagans used to part their hair. So the Prophet let his hair hang down first, but later on he parted it. Volume 7, Book 72, number 800, narrated by Aisha, as if I am now looking at the shine of the hair parting of the Prophet while he was in the state of Laram. Volume 7, Book 72, number 801, narrated by Ibn Abbas. Once I stayed overnight in the house of my aunt Maimuna. Bint al-Harith, and Allah's apostle was with her as it was her turn. Allah's apostle got up to offer the night prayer. I stood on his left, but he took hold of my 2 locks of hair and made me stand on his right. Volume 7, Book 72, number 802, narrated by Abu Bishr, the above hadith. But he quoted, Ibn Abbas said, "Took hold of my 2 braids on my head." Volume 7, Book 72, number 803, narrated by Ubaidullah bin Hafs. That Umar bin Nafi told him that Nafi, Mawla Abdullah, had heard Umar saying, "I heard Allah's apostle forbidding al-Qaza." Ubaidullah added, "I said, what is al-Qaza?" Ubaidullah pointed towards his head to show us and added, Nafi said, it is when a boy has his head shaved leaving a tuft of hair here and a tuft of hair there. Ubaidullah pointed towards his forehead and the sides of his head. Ubaidullah was asked, does this apply to both girls and boys? He said, I don't know, but Nafi said, the boy. Ubaidullah added, I asked Nafi again, and he said, as for leaving hair on the temples and the back part of the boy's head, there is no harm, but Al-Qaza is to leave a tuft of hair on his forehead unshaved, while there is no hair on the rest of his head, and also to leave hair on either side of his head. Volume 7, Book 72, number 804, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar Allah's apostle forbade Al-Qaza, leaving a tuft of hair here and there after shaving one's head. Volume 7, Book 72, number 805, narrated by Aisha, I applied perfume to the Prophet with my own hands when he wanted to assume the state of Ihram, and I also perfumed him at Mina before he departed from there to perform Tawaf al-Ifada. Volume 7, Book 72, number 806, narrated by Aisha. I used to perfume Allah's apostle with the best scent available till I saw the shine of the scent on his head and shine beard. Volume 7, Book 72, number 807, narrated by Sa'ad. A man peeped into the house of the Prophet through a hole while the Prophet was scratching his head with a midre, a certain kind of comb. On that the Prophet said to him, if I had known you had been looking, then I would have pierced your eye with that instrument, because the asking of permission has been ordained so that one would not see things unlawfully. Volume 7, Book 72, number 808, narrated by Aisha. I used to comb the hair of Allah's apostle during my periods. Volume 7, Book 72, number 809, narrated by Aisha, as above, 808. Volume 7, Book 72, number 810, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet used to like to start from the right side as far as possible in combing and in performing ablution. Volume 7, Book 72, number 811, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, Allah said, every good deed of Adam's son is for him except fasting. It is for me, and I shall reward the fasting person for it. Verily the smell of the mouth of a fasting person is better to Allah than the smell of musk. Volume 7, Book 72, number 812, narrated by Aisha used to perfume the Prophet before his assuming the state of with the best scent available. Volume 7, Book 72, number 813, narrated by Thumama bin Abdullah Anas never used to refuse a gift of scent and used to say that the Prophet never used to refuse a gift of scent. Volume 7, Book 72, number 814, narrated by Aisha during Hajjat al-Wada, I perfumed Allah's apostle with darira with my own hands, both on his assuming ihram and on finishing it. Volume 7, Book 72, number 815, narrated by Abdullah. Allah has cursed those women who practice tattooing and those who get themselves tattooed, and those who remove their face hairs, and those who create a space between their teeth artificially to look beautiful, and such women as change the features created by Allah. Why then should I not curse those whom the Prophet has cursed? And that is in Allah's book, i.e., his saying, and what the apostle gives you take it, and what he forbids you abstain from it. 59.7, Volume 7, Book 72, number 816, narrated by Humayd bin Abdur Rahman bin Auf, that in the year he performed Hajj, he heard Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan, who was on the pulpit and was taking a tuft of hair from one of his guards, saying, where are your religious learned men? I heard Allah's apostle forbidding this, false hair, and saying, the children of Israel were destroyed when their women started using this. Narrated Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, Allah has cursed the lady who artificially lengthens her or someone else's hair, and the one who gets her hair lengthened, and the one who tattoos herself or someone else, and the one who gets herself tattooed. Volume 7, Book 72, number 817, narrated by Aisha, an Ansari girl was married, and she became sick, and all her hair fell out, intending to provide her with false hair. They asked the Prophet, who said, Allah has cursed the lady who artificially lengthens her or someone else's hair, and also the one who gets her hair lengthened. Volume 7, Book 72, number 818, narrated by Asma, the daughter of Abu Bakr. A woman came to Allah's apostle and said, I married my daughter to someone, but she became sick and all her hair fell out, and because of that, her husband does not like her. May I let her use false hair? On that, the Prophet cursed such a lady as artificially lengthening her or someone else's hair, or got her hair lengthened artificially. Volume 7, Book 72, number 819, narrated by Asma, the daughter of Abu Bakr. Allah's apostle has cursed such a lady as artificially lengthening her or someone else's hair, or gets her hair lengthened. Volume 7, Book 72, number 820, narrated by Ibn Umar. Allah's apostle said, Allah has cursed such a lady as lengthens her or someone else's hair artificially or gets it lengthened, and also a lady who tattoos herself or someone else, or gets herself tattooed. Volume 7, Book 72, number 821, narrated by Sayyid bin al-Musayyab. Muawiyah came to Medina for the last time and delivered a sermon. He took out a tuft of hair and said, "I thought that none used to do this, that is use false hair, except Jews." The Prophet labeled such practice, that is the use of false hair, as cheating. Volume 7, Book 72, number 822, narrated by Alqamah. Abdullah cursed those women who practiced tattooing, and those who removed hair from their faces, and those who created spaces between their teeth artificially to look beautiful, such ladies as changed what Allah has created. Yaqub said, "What is that?" Abdullah said, "Why should I not curse those who were cursed by Allah's apostle and are referred to in Allah's book?" She said to him, "By Allah, I have read the whole Quran, but I have not found such a thing." Abdullah said, "By Allah, if you had read it carefully, you would have found it. Allah says, 'And what the apostle gives you, take it, and what he forbids you, abstain from it.'" 59.7. Volume 7, Book 72, number 823, narrated by Ibn Umar. The Prophet has cursed the lady who lengthens her hair artificially and the one who gets her hair lengthened, and also the lady who tattoos, herself or others, and the one who gets herself tattooed. Volume 7, Book 72, number 824, narrated by Asma. A woman asked the Prophet saying, "Zero Allah's apostle, my daughter got measles and her hair fell out. Now that I got her married, may I let her use false hair?" He said to her, "Allah has cursed the lady who lengthens hair artificially and the one who gets her hair lengthened artificially." Volume 7, Book 72, number 825, narrated by Ibn Umar. I heard the Prophet saying, or the Prophet said, "Allah has cursed the lady who practices tattooing and that who gets it done for herself, and also the lady who lengthens hair artificially and that who gets her hair lengthened artificially. The Prophet has cursed such ladies." Volume 7, Book 72, number 826, narrated by Ibn Masud. Allah has cursed those women who practice tattooing or get it done for themselves, and those who remove hair from their faces, and those who create spaces between their teeth artificially to look beautiful, such ladies as change the features created by Allah. Why then shall I not curse those whom Allah's apostle has cursed and who are cursed in Allah's book too? Volume 7, Book 72, number 827, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, "The evil eye is a fact," and he forbade tattooing. Volume 7, Book 72, number 828, narrated by Abdullah, as above 827. Volume 7, Book 72, number 829, narrated by Abu Juhayfa. The Prophet forbade the use of the price of blood and the price of a dog, the one who takes, eats, usury, the one who gives usury, the woman who practices tattooing, and the woman who gets herself tattooed. Volume 7, Book 72, number 830, narrated by Abu Huraira. A woman who used to practice tattooing was brought to Umar. Umar got up and said, "I beseech you by Allah, which of you heard the Prophet saying something about tattooing?" El got up and said, "Zero, chief of the believers, El heard something." He said, "What did you hear?" I said, "I heard the Prophet," addressing the ladies, saying, "Do not practice tattooing and do not get yourselves tattooed." Volume 7, Book 72, number 831, narrated by Ibn Umar. The Prophet has cursed the lady who lengthens hair artificially, and that who gets her hair lengthened in such a way, and the lady who practices tattooing, and that who gets it done for herself. Volume 7, Book 72, number 832. Narrated by Abdullah. Allah has cursed those women who practice tattooing and those who get it done for themselves, and those who remove hair from their faces, and those who artificially create spaces between their teeth to look beautiful, such women as alter the features created by Allah. Why should I not then curse those whom Allah's apostle has cursed, and that is in Allah's book? Volume 7, Book 72, number 833, narrated by Abu Talha. The Prophet said, "Angels do not enter a house in which there is a dog or there are pictures." Volume 7, Book 72, number 834, narrated by Muslim. We were with Masruq at the house of Yasar bin Numair. Masruq saw pictures on his terrace and said, "I heard Abdullah saying that he heard the Prophet saying, 'The people who will receive the severest punishment from Allah will be the picture makers.'" Volume 7, Book 72, number 835, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's apostle said, "Those who make these pictures will be punished on the day of resurrection, and it will be said to them, 'Make alive what you have created.'" Volume 7, Book 72, number 836, narrated by Aisha. "I never used to leave in the Prophet house anything carrying images or crosses, but he obliterated it." Volume 7, Book 72, number 837, narrated by Abu Zura. El entered a house in Medina with Abu Huraira, and he saw a man making pictures at the top of the house. Abu Huraira said, "I heard Allah's apostle saying that Allah said, Who would be more unjust than the one who tries to create the like of my creatures? Let them create a grain, let them create a gnat. Abu Huraira then asked for a water container and washed his arms up to his armpits. I said, "Zero Abu Huraira, is this something you have heard from Allah's apostle?" He said, "The limit for ablution is up to the place where the ornaments will reach on the day of resurrection." Volume 7, Book 72, number 838. Narrated by Aisha. Allah's apostle returned from a journey when I had placed a curtain of mine having pictures over the door of a chamber of mine. When Allah's apostle saw it, he tore it and said, "The people who will receive the severest punishment on the day of resurrection will be those who try to make the like of Allah's creations." So we turned it, that is the curtain, into 1 or 2 cushions. Volume 7, Book 72, number 839. Narrated by Aisha. The Prophet returned from a journey when I had hung a thick curtain having pictures in front of a door. He ordered me to remove it and I removed it. Aisha added, "The Prophet and I used to take a bath from one container of water." Volume 7, Book 72, number 840. Narrated by Aisha. I purchased a cushion with pictures on it. The Prophet came and stood at the door but did not enter. I said to him, "I repent to Allah for the guilt I have done." He said, "What is this cushion?" I said, "It is for you to sit on and recline on." He said, "The makers of these pictures will be punished on the day of resurrection, and it will be said to them, 'Make alive what you have created.' Moreover, the angels do not enter a house where there are pictures." Volume 7, Book 72, number 841, narrated by Abu Talha. Allah's apostle said, "Angels of mercy do not enter a house where there are pictures." The sub-narrator Busr added, "Then Zayd fell ill and we paid him a visit. Behold, there was hanging at his door a curtain decorated with a picture. I said to Ubaidullah al-Kolani, the stepson of Maimuna, the wife of the Prophet, 'Didn't Zayd tell us about the picture the day before yesterday?' Ubaidullah said, 'Didn't you hear him saying, "Except a design in a garment?'" Volume 7, Book 72, number 842, narrated by Anas. Aisha had a thick curtain, having pictures on it, and she screened the side of her house with it. The Prophet said to her, "Remove it from my sight, for its pictures are still coming to my mind in my prayers." Volume 7, Book 72, number 843, narrated by Salim's father. Once Gabriel promised to visit the Prophet, but he delayed and the Prophet got worried about that. At last he came out and found Gabriel and complained to him of his grief for his delay. Gabriel said to him, "We do not enter a place in which there is a picture or a dog." Volume 7, Book 72, number 844, narrated by Aisha. I bought a cushion having pictures on it. When Allah's apostle saw it, he stopped at the gate and did not enter. I noticed the signs of hatred for that on his face. I said, "O Allah's apostle, I turn to Allah and his apostle in repentance. What sin have I committed?" He said, "What about this cushion?" I said, "I bought it for you to sit on and recline on." Allah's apostle said, "The makers of these pictures will be punished severely on the day of resurrection, and it will be said to them, 'Make alive what you have created.'" He added, "Angels do not enter a house in which there are pictures." Volume 7, Book 72, number 845, narrated by Abu Juhayfa. That he had bought a slave whose profession was cupping. The Prophet forbade taking the price of blood and the price of a dog and the earnings of a prostitute, and cursed the one who took or gave riba, usury, and the lady who tattooed others or got herself tattooed, and the picture maker. Volume 7, Book 72, number 846, narrated by Ibn Abbas. I heard Muhammad saying, "Whoever makes a picture in this world will be asked to put life into it on the day of resurrection, but he will not be able to do so." Volume 7, Book 72, number 847, narrated by Usama bin Zaid. Allah's apostle rode a donkey saddled with a saddle covered with a fatakiya velvet sheet, and he made me ride behind him. Volume 7, Book 72, number 848, narrated by Ibn Abbas. When the Prophet arrived at Mecca, the children of Bani Abdul Muttalib received him. He then mounted one of them in front of him and the other behind him. Volume 7, Book 72, number 849, narrated by Ayub. The worst of 3 persons riding one animal was mentioned in Ikrimah's presence. Ikrimah said, Ibn Abbas said, "In the year of the conquest of Mecca, the Prophet came and mounted Kuthum in front of him and Al-Fadl behind him, or Kuthum behind him and Al-Fadl in front of him. Now which of them was the worst off and which was the best?" Volume 7, Book 72, number 850, narrated by Mu'ad bin Jabal. While I was riding behind the Prophet and between me and him there was only the back of the saddle, he said, "Zero Mu'ad." I replied, "Labayik, 0 Allah's apostle and Sadayik." He said, "Do you know what is Allah's right upon his slave?" I said, "Allah and his apostle know best." He said Allah's right upon his slaves is that they should worship him alone and not worship anything else besides him. Then he proceeded for a while and then said, O Muad bin Jabal. I replied, Labayk, O Allah's apostle, Sadaiq. He said, Do you know what is the right of the slaves upon Allah if they do that? I replied, Allah and his apostle know best. He said, The right of the slaves upon Allah is that he will not punish them if they do that. Volume 7, Book 72, number 851, narrated by Anas bin Malik. We were coming from Khaybar along with Allah's apostle while El was riding behind Abu Talha and he was preceding. While one of the wives of Allah's apostle was riding behind Allah's apostle, suddenly the foot of the camel slipped, and I said, The woman, and alighted, hurriedly. Allah's apostle said, She is your mother. Saul resaddled the she-camel, and Allah's apostle mounted it. When he approached or saw Medina, he said, Ayibun Taibun Abidun li Rabbina Hamidun. Volume 7, Book 72, number 852. Narrated by Abad bin Tamim's uncle, I saw the Prophet lying down in the mosque and placing one leg on the other. Volume 8, Book 73, number 1, narrated by Al-Walid bin Izar. I heard Abi Amr ash-Shaybani saying, The owner of this house. He pointed to Abdullah's house, said, I asked the Prophet which deed is loved most by Allah. He replied, To offer prayers at their early, very first stated times. Abdullah asked, What is the next, in goodness? The Prophet said, To be good and dutiful to one's parents. Abdullah asked, What is the next, in goodness? The Prophet said, To participate in jihad for Allah's cause. Abdullah added, The Prophet narrated to me these three things, and if I had asked more, he would have told me more. Volume 8, Book 73, number 2, narrated by Abu Hurairah. A man came to Allah's apostle and said, O Allah's apostle, who is more entitled to be treated with the best companionship by me? The Prophet said, Your mother. The man said, Who is next? The Prophet said, Your mother. The man further said, Who is next? The Prophet said, Your mother. The man asked for the fourth time, Who is next? The Prophet said, Your father. Volume 8, Book 73, number 3, narrated by Abdullah bin Amr. A man said to the Prophet, Shall I participate in jihad? The Prophet said, Are your parents living? The man said, Yes. The Prophet said, Do jihad for their benefit. Volume 8, Book 73, number 4, narrated by Abdullah bin Amr. Allah's apostle said, It is one of the greatest sins that a man should curse his parents. It was asked by the people, O Allah's apostle, how does a man curse his parents? The Prophet said, The man abuses the father of another man, and the latter abuses the father of the former and abuses his mother. Volume 8, Book 73, number 5, narrated by Ibn Umar. Allah's apostle said, While 3 persons were traveling, they were overtaken by rain, and they took shelter in a cave in a mountain. A big rock fell from the mountain over the mouth of the cave and blocked it. They said to each other, Think of such good, righteous deeds which you did for Allah's sake only, and invoke Allah by giving reference to those deeds so that Allah may relieve you from your difficulty. One of them said, O Allah, I had my parents who were very old, and I had small children for whose sake I used to work as a shepherd. When I returned to them at night and milked the sheep, I used to start giving the milk to my parents first before giving to my children. And one day, I went far away in search of a grazing place for my sheep, and didn't return home till late at night and found that my parents had slept. I milked my livestock, as usual, and brought the milk vessel and stood at their heads, and I disliked to wake them up from their sleep, and I also disliked to give the milk to my children before my parents, though my children were crying, from hunger, at my feet. So this state of mine and theirs continued till the day dawned. O Allah, if you considered that I had done that only for seeking your pleasure, then please let there be an opening through which we can see the sky. So Allah made for them an opening through which they could see the sky. Then the second person said, O Allah, I had a she-cousin whom I loved as much as a passionate man loves a woman. I tried to seduce her, but she refused till I paid her 100 dinars, so I worked hard till I collected 100 dinars and went to her with that. But when I sat in between her legs to have sexual intercourse with her, she said, O Allah's slave, be afraid of Allah, do not deflower me except legally, by marriage contract. So I left her, O Allah. If you considered that I had done that only for seeking your pleasure, then please let the rock move a little to have a wider opening. So Allah shifted that rock to make the opening wider for them. And the last, third person said, O Allah, I employed a laborer for wages equal to a farak, a certain measure of rice, and when he had finished his job he demanded his wages, but when I presented his due to him, he gave it up and refused to take it. Then I kept on sowing that rice for him, several times, till managed to buy with the price of the yield, some cows and their shepherd. Later on the laborer came to me and said, O Allah's slave, be afraid, O Allah, and do not be unjust to me and give me my due. I said to him, Go and take those cows and their shepherd, so he took them and went away. So, O Allah, if you considered that I had done that for seeking your pleasure, then please remove the remaining part of the rock. And so Allah released them from their difficulty. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 6, narrated by Al-Mughira. The Prophet said, Allah has forbidden you, 1. To be undutiful to your mothers, 2. To withhold what you should give, or 3. Demand what you do not deserve, and 4. To bury your daughters alive. And Allah has disliked that A. You talk too much about others, B. Ask too many questions in religion, or C. Waste your property. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 7, narrated by Abu Bakr. Allah's apostle said thrice, Shall I not inform you of the biggest of the great sins? We said, Yes, O Allah's apostle. He said, To join partners in worship with Allah, to be undutiful to one's parents. The Prophet sat up after he had been reclining and added, And I warn you against giving forged statement and a false witness. I warn you against giving a forged statement and a false witness. The Prophet kept on saying that warning till we thought that he would not stop. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 8, narrated by Anas bin Malik. Allah's apostle mentioned the greatest sins, or he was asked about the greatest sins. He said, To join partners in worship with Allah, to kill a soul which Allah has forbidden to kill, and to be undutiful or unkind to one's parents. The Prophet added, Shall I inform you of the biggest of the great sins? That is the forged statement or the false witness. Shuba, the sub-narrator, states that most probably the Prophet said, the false witness. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 9, narrated by Asma bint Abu Bakr. My mother came to me, hoping, for my favor, during the lifetime of the Prophet, asked the Prophet, May I treat her kindly? He replied, Yes. Ibn Uyayna said, Then Allah revealed, Allah forbids you not with regards to those who fought not against you because of religion, and drove you not out from your homes, that you should show them kindness and deal justly with them. 60.8. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 10, narrated by Abu Sufyan, that Heraclius sent for him and said, What did the Prophet order you? I replied, He orders us to offer prayers, to give alms, to be chaste, and to keep good relations with our relatives. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 11, narrated by Ibn Umar. My father, seeing a silken cloak being sold, said, O Allah's apostle, buy this and wear it on Fridays and when the foreign delegates pay a visit to you. He said, This is worn only by that person who will have no share in the hereafter. Later, a few silken cloaks were given to the Prophet as a gift, and he sent one of those cloaks to Umar. Umar said to the Prophet, How can I wear it while you have said about it what you said? The Prophet said, I did not give it to you to wear but to sell or to give to someone else to wear. So Umar sent it to his pagan brother, who was from the inhabitants of Mecca before he, Umar's brother, embraced Islam. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 12, narrated by Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. A man said, O Allah's apostle, inform me of a deed which will make me enter paradise. The people said, What is the matter with him? What is the matter with him? Allah's apostle said, He has something to ask, what he needs greatly. The Prophet said to him, In order to enter paradise, you should worship Allah and join none in worship with him. You should offer prayers perfectly, give obligatory charity, zakat, and keep good relations with your kith and kin. He then said, Leave it. The sub-narrator said, It seems that the Prophet was riding his she-camel. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 13, narrated by Jubair bin Mut'im, that he heard the Prophet saying, The person who severs the bond of kinship will not enter paradise. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 14, narrated by Abu Huraira. I heard Allah's apostle saying, Whoever is pleased that he be granted more wealth and that his lease of life be prolonged, then he should keep good relations with his kith and kin. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 15, narrated by Anas bin Malik. Allah's apostle said, Whoever loves that he be granted more wealth and that his lease of life be prolonged, then he should keep good relations with his kith and kin. Narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, Allah created the creations, and when he finished from his creations, Ar-Rahman. Womb said, O Allah, at this place I seek refuge with you from all those who sever me. That is sever the ties of kith and kin. Allah said, Yes, won't you be pleased that I will keep good relations with the one who will keep good relations with you, and I will sever the relation with the one who will sever the relations with you. It said, Yes, O my Lord. Allah said, Then that is for you. Allah's apostle added, Read in the Quran if you wish the statement of Allah. Would you then, if you were given the authority, do mischief in the land and sever your ties of kinship? 47.22. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 17, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, The word Aram, womb, derives its name from Ar-Rahman, that is, one of the names of Allah, and Allah said, I will keep good relation with the one who will keep good relation with you, womb that is kith and kin, and sever the relation with him who will sever the relation with you. Womb, that is, kith and kin. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 18, narrated by Aisha, the wife of the Prophet. The Prophet said, the word Aram, womb, derives its name from Ar-Rahman, that is Allah. So whosoever keeps good relations with it, womb, that is kith and kin, Allah will keep good relations with him, and whosoever will sever it, that is severs his bonds of kith and kin, Allah too will sever his relations with him. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 19, narrated by Amr bin Al. As I heard the Prophet saying openly, not secretly, the family of Abu so-and-so, that is Talib, are not among my protectors. Amr said that there was a blank space, 1, in the book of Muhammad bin Jafar. He added, my protector is Allah and the righteous believing people. Amr bin al-Az added, I heard the Prophet saying, but they, that family, have kinship, Ram, with me, and I will be good and dutiful to them. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 20, narrated by Abdullah bin Amr. The Prophet said, Al-Wasil is not the one who recompenses the good done to him by his relatives, but Al-Wasil is the one who keeps good relations with those relatives who had severed the bond of kinship with him. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 21, narrated by Hakim bin Hizam that he said, O Allah's Apostle, what do you think about my good deeds which I used to do during the period of ignorance before embracing Islam, like keeping good relations with my kith and kin, manumitting of slaves and giving alms, etc.? Shall I receive the reward for that? Allah's Apostle said, you have embraced Islam with all those good deeds which you did. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 22, narrated by said Khalid bint. Khalid bin Said said, I came to Allah's Apostle along with my father and I was wearing a yellow shirt. Allah's Apostle said, Sana Sana. Abdullah, the sub-narrator, said it means nice, nice in the Ethiopian language. Khalid added, then I started playing with the seal of prophethood. My father admonished me, but Allah's Apostle said to my father, leave her. Allah's Apostle, then addressing me, said, may you live so long that your dress gets worn out, and you will mend it many times and then wear another till it gets worn out. That is, may Allah prolong your life. The sub-narrator, Abdullah aid, that garment which she was wearing remained usable for a long period. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 23, narrated by Ibn Abi Nam. I was present when a man asked Ibn Umar said, from where are you? The man replied, from Iraq. Ibn Umar, about the blood of mosquitoes. Ibn Umar said, look at that. He is asking me about the blood of mosquitoes while they, the Iraqis, have killed the grandson of the Prophet. I have heard the Prophet saying, they, Hassan and Hussein, are my two sweet-smelling flowers in this world. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 24, narrated by Aisha, the wife of the Prophet. A lady along with her 2 daughters came to me asking me for some alms, but she found nothing with me except 1 date which I gave to her, and she divided it between her 2 daughters, and then she got up and went away. Then the Prophet came in, and I informed him about this story. He said, whoever is in charge of, put to test by these daughters and treats them generously, then they will act as a shield for him from the hell fire. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 25, narrated by Abu Qatada. The Prophet came out towards us while carrying Umama, the daughter of Abi Alas, his granddaughter, over his shoulder. He prayed, and when he wanted to bow, he put her down, and when he stood up, he lifted her up. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 26, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's Apostle kissed Al-Hasan bin Ali while Al-Aqra bin Habis at-Tamim was sitting beside him. Al-Aqra said, I have 10 children and I have never kissed any one of them. Allah's Apostle cast a look at him and said, whoever is not merciful to others will not be treated mercifully. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 27, narrated by Aisha. A Bedouin came to the Prophet and said, you people kiss the boys, we don't kiss them. The Prophet said, I cannot put mercy in your heart after Allah has taken it away from it. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 28, narrated by Umar bin al-Khattab. Some Sabi, that is war prisoners, children and women only, were brought before the Prophet, and behold, a woman amongst them was milking her breasts to feed, and whenever she found a child amongst the captives, she took it over her chest and nursed it. She had lost her child, but later she found him. The Prophet said to us, do you think that this lady can throw her son in the fire? We replied, no, if she has the power not to throw it in the fire. The Prophet then said, Allah is more merciful to his slaves than this lady to her son. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 29, narrated by Abu Huraira. I heard Allah's Apostle saying, Allah divided mercy into 100 parts, and he kept its 99 parts with him, and sent down its 1 part on the earth, and because of that, its 1 single part, his creations are merciful to each other, so that even the mare lifts up its hooves away from its baby animal, lest it should trample on it. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 30, narrated by Abdullah. I said, O Allah's Apostle, which sin is the greatest? He said, to set up a rival unto Allah, though He alone created you. I said, what next? He said, to kill your son lest he should share your food with you. I further asked, what next? He said, to commit illegal sexual intercourse with the wife of your neighbor. And then Allah revealed as proof of the statement of the Prophet, those who invoke not with Allah any other God. To end of verse. 25.68. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 31, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet took a child in his lap for tonic, that is, he chewed a date in his mouth and put its juice in the mouth of the child. The child urinated on him, so he asked for water and poured it over the place of the urine. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 32, narrated by Usama bin Zaid. Allah's apostle used to put me on one of his thighs and put Al-Hassan bin Ali on his other thigh, and then embrace us and say, O Allah, please be merciful to them as I am merciful to them. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 33, narrated by Aisha. I never felt so jealous of any woman as I did of Khadijah, though she had died 3 years before the Prophet married me, and that was because I heard him mentioning her too often, and because his Lord had ordered him to give her the glad tidings that she would have a palace in paradise, made of kasab, and because he used to slaughter a sheep and distribute its meat among her friends. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 34, narrated by Sahl bin Sa'd. The Prophet said, I and the person who looks after an orphan and provides for him will be in paradise like this, putting his index and middle fingers together. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 35, narrated by Safwan bin Salim. The Prophet said, the one who looks after and works for a widow and for a poor person is like a warrior fighting for Allah's cause, or like a person who fasts during the day and prays all the night. Narrated Abu Huraira that the Prophet said as above. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 36, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, the one who looks after and works for a widow and for a poor person is like a warrior fighting for Allah's cause. The narrator Al-Kanabi is not sure whether he also said, like the one who prays all the night without slackness and fasts continuously and never breaks his fast. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 37, narrated by Abu Sulaiman and Malik bin Huwairith. We came to the Prophet, and we were a few, young men of approximately equal age, and stayed with him for 20 nights. Then he thought that we were anxious for our families, and he asked us whom we had left behind to look after our families, and we told him. He was kind-hearted and merciful, so he said, return to your families and teach them religious knowledge, and order them to do good deeds, and offer your prayers in the way you saw me offering my prayers, and when the stated time for the prayer becomes due, then one of you should pronounce its call, that is the adhan, and the eldest of you should lead you in prayer. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 38, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, while a man was walking on a road, he became very thirsty. Then he came across a well, got down into it, drank of its water, and then came out. Meanwhile he saw a dog panting and licking mud because of excessive thirst. The man said to himself, this dog is suffering from the same state of thirst as I did. So he went down the well, again, and filled his shoe with water, and held it in his mouth and watered the dog. Allah thanked him for that deed and forgave him. The people asked, O Allah's apostle, is there a reward for us in serving the animals? He said, yes, there is a reward for serving any animate, living being. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 39, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle stood up for the prayer, and we too stood up along with him. Then a Bedouin shouted while offering prayer, O Allah, bestow your mercy on me and Muhammad only, and do not bestow it on anybody else along with us. When the Prophet had finished his prayer with Taslim, he said to the Bedouin, you have limited, narrowed, a very vast thing, meaning Allah's mercy. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 40, narrated by An-Nu'man bin Bashir. Allah's apostle said, you see the believers as regards their being merciful among themselves and showing love among themselves and being kind, resembling one body. So that if any part of the body is not well, then the whole body shares the sleeplessness, insomnia, and fever with it. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 41, narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet said, if any Muslim plants any plant and a human being or an animal eats of it, he will be rewarded as if he had given that much in charity. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 42, narrated by Jarir bin Abdullah. The Prophet said, he who is not merciful to others will not be treated mercifully. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 43, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet said, Gabriel continued to recommend me about treating the neighbors kindly and politely, so much so that I thought he would order me to make them as my heirs. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 44, narrated by Ibn Umar. Allah Apostle said, Gabriel kept on recommending me about treating the neighbors in a kind and polite manner, so much so that I thought that he would order me to make them my heirs. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 45, narrated by Abu Sharai. The Prophet said, "By Allah, he does not believe. By Allah, he does not believe. By Allah, he does not believe." It was said, "Who is that, O Allah's apostle?" He said, "That person whose neighbor does not feel safe from his evil." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 46, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet used to say, "O Muslim ladies, a neighboress should not look down upon the present of her neighboress, even it were the hooves of a sheep." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 47, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, "Anybody who believes in Allah and the last day should not harm his neighbor, and anybody who believes in Allah and the last day should entertain his guest generously, and anybody who believes in Allah and the last day should talk what is good or keep quiet. That is abstain from all kinds of evil and dirty talk." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 48, narrated by Abu Sharai al-Adawi. My ears heard and my eyes saw the Prophet when he spoke. Anybody who believes in Allah and the last day should serve his neighbor generously, and anybody who believes in Allah and the last day should serve his guest generously by giving him his reward. It was asked, "What is his reward, O Allah's apostle?" He said, "To be entertained generously, for a day and a night with high quality of food, and the guest has the right to be entertained for 3 days with ordinary food, and if he stays longer, what he will be provided with will be regarded as sadaqah, a charitable gift. And anybody who believes in Allah and the last day should talk what is good or keep quiet, that is abstain from all kinds of dirty and evil talks." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 49, narrated by Aisha. I said, "O Allah's apostle, I have 2 neighbors, to whom shall I send my gifts?" He said, "To the one whose gate is nearer to you." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 50, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. The Prophet said, "Enjoining all that is good is a sadaqah." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 51, narrated by Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. The Prophet said, "On every Muslim there is enjoined a compulsory sadaqah, alms." They, the people, said, "If one has nothing," he said, "he should work with his hands so that he may benefit himself and give in charity." They said, "If he cannot work or does not work," he said, "then he should help the oppressed unhappy person, by word or action or both." They said, "If he does not do it," he said, "then he should enjoin what is good, or said what is reasonable." They said, "If he does not do that," he said, "then he should refrain from doing evil, for that will be considered for him as a sadaqah, charity." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 52, narrated by Adi bin Hatim. The Prophet mentioned the hell fire and sought refuge with Allah from it, and turned his face to the other side. He mentioned the hell fire again, and took refuge with Allah from it, and turned his face to the other side. Shuba, the sub-narrator, said, "I have no doubt that the Prophet repeated it twice." The Prophet then said, "O people, save yourselves from the hell fire, even if with 1/2 of a date fruit, given in charity. And if this is not available, then save yourselves by saying a good, pleasant, friendly word." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 53, narrated by Aisha, the wife of the Prophet. A group of Jews entered upon the Prophet and said, "As-samu alaykum," that is, death be upon you. I understood it and said, "Wa alaykum as-samu wallan," death and the curse of Allah be upon you. Allah's apostle said, "Be calm, O Aisha, Allah loves that should be kind and lenient in all matters." I said, "O Allah's apostle, haven't you heard what they, the Jews, have said?" Allah's apostle said, "I have already said to them, and upon you." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 54, narrated by Anas bin Malik. A Bedouin urinated in the mosque and the people ran to beat him. Allah's apostle said, "Do not interrupt his urination, that is, let him finish." Then the Prophet asked for a tumbler of water and poured the water over the place of urine. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 55, narrated by Abu Musa. The Prophet said, "A believer to another believer is like a building whose different parts enforce each other." The Prophet then clasped his hands with the fingers interlaced. At that time, the Prophet was sitting and a man came and begged or asked for something. The Prophet faced us and said, "Help and recommend him, and you will receive the reward for it, and Allah will bring about what he will through his Prophet's tongue." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 56, narrated by Masruq. Abdullah bin Amr mentioned Allah's apostle, saying that he was neither a fahish nor a mutafahish. Abdullah bin Amr added, Allah's apostle said, "The best among you are those who have the best manners and character." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 57, narrated by Abdullah bin Mulaika. Aisha said that the Jews came to the Prophet and said, "As-samu alaykum, death be on you." Aisha said to them, "Death be on you, and may Allah curse you and shower his wrath upon you." The Prophet said, "Be calm, O Aisha, you should be kind and lenient, and beware of harshness and fush, that is bad words." She said to the Prophet, "Haven't you heard what they, Jews, have said?" He said, "Haven't you heard what I have said to them?" I said the same to them, and my invocation against them will be accepted while theirs against me will be rejected, by Allah. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 58, narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet was not one who would abuse others or say obscene words or curse others, and if he wanted to admonish any one of us, he used to say, "What is wrong with him? His forehead be dusted." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 59, narrated by Aisha. A man asked permission to enter upon the Prophet. When the Prophet saw him, he said, "What an evil brother of his tribe, and what an evil son of his tribe." When that man sat down, the Prophet behaved with him in a nice and polite manner and was completely at ease with him. When that person had left, Aisha said to the Prophet, "O Allah's apostle, when you saw that man you said so-and-so about him, then you showed him a kind and polite behavior, and you enjoyed his company." Allah's apostle said, "O Aisha, have you ever seen me speaking a bad and dirty language? Remember that. The worst people in Allah's sight on the day of resurrection will be those whom the people leave, undisturbed, to be away from their evil deeds." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 59, narrated by Anas. The Prophet was the best among the people, both in shape and character, and was the most generous of them, and was the bravest of them. Once during the night the people of Medina got afraid of a sound, so the people went towards that sound, but the Prophet, having gone to that sound before them, met them while he was saying, "Don't be afraid, don't be afraid." At that time, he was riding a horse belonging to Abu Talha, and it was naked without a saddle, and he was carrying a sword slung at his neck. The Prophet said, "I found it, the horse, like a sea," or, "It is the sea indeed." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 60, narrated by Jabir. Never was the Prophet asked for a thing to be given for which his answer was no. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 61, narrated by Masruq. We were sitting with Abdullah bin Ammar, who was narrating to us, hadith. He said, Allah's apostle was neither a fahish nor a mutafahish, and he used to say, "The best among you are the best in character, having good manners." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 62, narrated by Abu Hazim Sahl. Bin Sa'ad said that a woman brought a burda, sheet, to the Prophet. Sahl asked the people, "Do you know what is a burda?" The people replied, "It is a shamla, a sheet with a fringe." That woman said, "O Allah's apostle, I have brought it so that you may wear it." So the Prophet took it because he was in need of it and wore it. A man among his companions, seeing him wearing it, said, "O Allah's apostle, please give it to me to wear." The Prophet said, "Yes," and gave him that sheet. When the Prophet left, the man was blamed by his companions, who said, "It was not nice on your part to ask the Prophet for it while you know that he took it because he was in need of it, and you also know that he, the Prophet, never turns down anybody's request that he might be asked for." That man said, "I just wanted to have its blessings as the Prophet had put it on, so El hoped that I might be shrouded in it." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 63, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, "Time will pass rapidly, good deeds will decrease, and miserliness will be thrown in the hearts of the people, and the harj will increase." They asked, "What is the harj?" He replied, "It is killing, murdering, it is murdering, killing." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 64, narrated by Anas. I served the Prophet for 10 years, and he never said to me, "Uff," a minor harsh word denoting impatience, and never blamed me by saying, "Why did you do so?" or "Why didn't you do so?" Volume 8, Book 73, Number 65, narrated by Al-Aswad. I asked Aisha, what did the Prophet use to do at home? She replied, he used to keep himself busy serving his family, and when it was time for the prayer, he would get up for prayer. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 66, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, "If Allah loves a person, he calls Gabriel saying, 'Allah loves so-and-so, O Gabriel, love him.' Gabriel would love him, and then Gabriel would make an announcement among the residents of the heaven, 'Allah loves so-and-so, therefore you should love him also.' So all the residents of the heavens would love him, and then he is granted the pleasure of the people of the earth." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 67, narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet said, "None will have the sweetness, delight of faith, A, till he loves a person and loves him only for Allah's sake, B, until it becomes dearer to him to be thrown in the fire than to revert to disbelief, heathenism, after Allah has brought him out of it, C, until Allah and his apostle become dearer to him than anything else." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 68, narrated by Abdullah bin Zama. The Prophet forbade laughing at a person who passes wind, and said, "How does any one of you beat his wife as he beats the stallion camel, and then he may embrace, sleep with her?" And Hisham said, "As he beats his slave." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 69, narrated by Ibn Umar. The Prophet said at Mina, "Do you know what day is today?" They, the people, replied, "Allah and his apostle know better." He said, "Today is 10th of Dhul Hijjah, the sacred forbidden day." "Do you know what town is this town?" They, the people, replied, "Allah and his apostle know better." He said, "This is the forbidden sacred town, Mecca a sanctuary." "And do you know which month is this month?" They, the people, replied, "Allah and his apostle know better." He said, "This is the sacred forbidden month." He added, "Allah has made your blood, your properties, and your honor sacred to one another, that is Muslims, like the sanctity of this day of yours in this month of yours in this town of yours." See Hadith number 797, Vol. 2. Volume 8, Book 73, number 70, narrated by Abdullah Allah's apostle said, "Abusing a Muslim is fusuk, that is, an evil doing, and killing him is kufr, disbelief." Volume 8, Book 73, number 71, narrated by Abu Dar. That he heard the Prophet saying, "If somebody accuses another of fusuk by calling him fasik, that is a wicked person, or accuses him of kufr, such an accusation will revert to him, that is the accuser, if his companion, the accused, is innocent." Volume 8, Book 73, number 72, narrated by Anas. Allah's apostle was neither a fahish, one who had a bad tongue, nor a sababa, one who abuses others, and he used to say while admonishing somebody, "What is wrong with him? May dust be on his forehead." Volume 8, Book 73, number 73, narrated by Thabit bin ad-Dahak, who was one of the companions who gave the pledge of allegiance to the Prophet underneath the tree, Al-Hudaybiyah. Allah's apostle said, "Whoever swears by a religion other than Islam," that is, if somebody swears by saying that he is a non-Muslim, for example, a Jew or a Christian, etc., in case he is telling a lie, he is really so if his oath is false, and a person is not bound to fulfill a vow about a thing which he does not possess. And if somebody commits suicide with anything in this world, he will be tortured with that very thing on the day of resurrection. And if somebody curses a believer, then his sin will be as if he murdered him, and whoever accuses a believer of kufr, disbelief, then it is as if he killed him. Volume 8, Book 73, number 74, narrated by Suleiman bin Surad. A man from the companions of the Prophet said, "Two men abused each other in front of the Prophet, and one of them became angry, and his anger became so intense that his face became swollen and changed. The Prophet said, 'I know a word the saying of which will cause him to relax if he does say it.' Then a man went to him and informed him of the statement of the Prophet and said, 'Seek refuge with Allah from Satan.' On that, angry man said, 'Do you find anything wrong with me? Am I insane? Go away.' Volume 8, Book 73, number 75, narrated by Ubadah bin As-Samit. Allah's apostle went out to inform the people about the date of the night of decree, Al-Qadr. There happened a quarrel between two Muslim men. The Prophet said, 'I came out to inform you about the night of Al-Qadr, but as so-and-so and so-and-so quarreled, so the news about it had been taken away, and maybe it was better for you. So look for it in the 9th, the 7th, or the 5th of the last 10 days of Ramadan.' Volume 8, Book 73, number 76, narrated by Marur. I saw Abu Dar wearing a bird garment, and his slave too was wearing a bird, so I said to Abu Dar, 'If you take this burda of your slave and wear it along with yours, you will have a nice suit, costume, and you may give him another garment.' Abu Dar said, 'There was a quarrel between me and another man whose mother was a non-Arab, and I called her bad names. The man mentioned, complained about me to the Prophet. The Prophet said, "Did you abuse so-and-so?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Did you call his mother bad names?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You still have the traits of the pre-Islamic period of ignorance." I said, "Do I still have ignorance, even now in my old age?" He said, "Yes, they, slaves or servants, are your brothers, and Allah has put them under your command. So the one under whose hand Allah has put his brother should feed him of what he eats and give him dresses of what he wears, and should not ask him to do a thing beyond his capacity. And if at all he asks him to do a hard task, he should help him therein." Volume 8, Book 73, number 77, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet led us in the Zuhr prayer, offering only 2 rakat, and then finished it with taslim, and went to a piece of wood in front of the mosque and put his hand over it. Abu Bakr and Umar were also present among the people on that day, but dared not talk to him about his unfinished prayer. And the hasty people went away, wondering, "Has the prayer been shortened?" Among the people there was a man whom the Prophet used to call Dhul Yadayn, the long-armed. He said, "O Allah's Prophet, have you forgotten, or has the prayer been shortened?" The Prophet said, "Neither have I forgotten, nor has it been shortened." They, the people, said, "Surely you have forgotten, O Allah's Apostle." The Prophet said, "Dhul Yadayn has told the truth." So the Prophet got up and offered other 2 rakat and finished his prayer with taslim. Then he said takbir, performed a prostration of ordinary duration or longer. Then he raised his head and said takbir and performed another prostration of ordinary duration or longer, and then raised his head and said takbir. That is, he performed the 2 prostrations of sahu, that is, forgetfulness. Volume 8, Book 73, number 78. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. Allah's apostle passed by 2 graves and said, both of them, persons in the grave, are being tortured, and they are not being tortured for a major sin. This one used not to save himself from being soiled with his urine, and the other used to go about with calumnies among the people to rouse hostilities. For example, one goes to a person and tells him that so-and-so says about him such and such evil things. The Prophet then asked for a green leaf of a date palm tree, split it into 2 pieces, and planted one on each grave and said, it is hoped that their punishment may be abated till those 2 pieces of the leaf get dried. See Hadith. No 215, Vol 1. Volume 8, Book 73, number 79. Narrated by Abu Usaid as-Sa'idi. The Prophet said, the best family among the Ansar is the Banu an-Najjar. Volume 8, Book 73, number 80. Narrated by Aisha. A man asked permission to enter upon Allah's apostle. The Prophet said, admit him, what an evil brother of his people or a son of his people. But when the man entered, the Prophet spoke to him in a very polite manner. And when that person left, I said, O Allah's apostle, you had said what you had said, yet you spoke to him in a very polite manner. The Prophet said, O Aisha, the worst people are those whom the people desert or leave in order to save themselves from their dirty language or from their transgression. Volume 8, Book 73, number 81, narrated by Ibn Abbas. Once the Prophet went through the graveyards of Medina and heard the voices of 2 humans who were being tortured in their graves. The Prophet said, they are being punished, but they are not being punished because of a major sin, yet their sins are great. One of them used not to save himself from being soiled with the urine, and the other used to go about with calumnies, namima. Then the Prophet asked for a green palm tree leaf and split it into 2 pieces and placed 1 piece on each grave, saying, I hope that their punishment may be abated as long as these pieces of the leaf are not dried. Volume 8, Book 73, number 82, narrated by Hudhaifa. I heard the Prophet saying, a katat will not enter paradise. Volume 8, Book 73, number 83, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, whoever does not give up false statements, that is telling lies, and evil deeds and speaking bad words to others, Allah is not in need of his, fasting, leaving his food and drink. Volume 8, Book 73, number 84, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, the worst people in the sight of Allah on the day of resurrection will be the double-faced people who appear to some people with one face and to other people with another face. Volume 8, Book 73, number 85, narrated by Ibn Mas'ud. Once Allah's apostle divided and distributed the war booty. An Ansar man said, by Allah, Muhammad by this distribution did not intend to please Allah. So I came to Allah's apostle and informed him about it, whereupon his face became changed with anger, and he said, may Allah bestow his mercy on Moses, for he was hurt with more than this, yet he remained patient. Volume 8, Book 73, number 86, narrated by Abu Musa. The Prophet heard a man praising another man, and he was exaggerating in his praise. The Prophet said to him, you have destroyed or cut the back of the man. Volume 8, Book 73, number 87, narrated by Abu Bakr. A man was mentioned before the Prophet, and another man praised him greatly. The Prophet said, may Allah's mercy be on you, you have cut the neck of your friend. The Prophet repeated this sentence many times and said, if it is indispensable for any one of you to praise someone, then he should say, I think that he is so-and-so, if he really thinks that he is such. Allah is the one who will take his accounts, as he knows his reality, and no one can sanctify anybody before Allah. Khalid said, woe to you, instead of Allah's mercy be on you. Volume 8, Book 73, number 88, narrated by Salim, that his father said, when Allah's apostle mentioned he mentioned about the hanging of the izar waist sheet, Abu Bakr said, O Allah's apostle, my izar slackens on one side without my intention. The Prophet said, you are not among those who, out of pride, drag their izars behind them. Volume 8, Book 73, number 89, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet continued for such and such period imagining that he has had sexual relations with his wives, and in fact he did not. One day he said to me, O Aisha, Allah has instructed me regarding a matter about which I had asked him. There came to me 2 men, one of them sat near my feet and the other near my head. The one near my feet asked the one near my head, pointing at me, what is wrong with this man? The latter replied, he is under the effect of magic. The first one asked, who had worked magic on him? The other replied, Lubaid bin Assam. The first one asked, what material did he use? The other replied, The skin of the pollen of a male date tree with a comb and the hair stuck to it, kept under a stone in the well of Darwan. Then the prophet went to that well and said, "This is the same well which was shown to me in the dream. The tops of its date palm trees look like the heads of the devils, and its water looks like the henna infusion." Then the prophet ordered that those things be taken out. I said, "O Allah's apostle, won't you disclose the magic object?" The prophet said, "Allah has cured me and I hate to circulate the evil among the people." Aisha added, "The magician, Lubayd bin Asam, was a man from Bani Zuraik, an ally of the Jews. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 90, narrated by Abu Huraira. The prophet said, "Beware of suspicion, for suspicion is the worst of false tales, and do not look for the other's faults, and do not spy, and do not be jealous of one another, and do not desert, cut your relation with one another, and do not hate one another, and O Allah's worshippers, be brothers as Allah has ordered you." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 91, narrated by Anas bin Malik. Allah's apostle said, "Do not hate one another, and do not be jealous of one another, and do not desert each other, and O Allah's worshippers, be brothers. Lo, it is not permissible for any Muslim to desert, not talk to, his brother Muslim for more than 3 days." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 92, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, "Beware of suspicion, for suspicion is the worst of false tales. And do not look for the other's faults, and do not do spying on one another, and do not practice nash, and do not be jealous of one another, and do not hate one another, and do not desert, stop talking to, one another, and O Allah's worshippers, be brothers." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 93, narrated by Aisha. The prophet said, "I do not think that so-and-so and so-and-so know anything of our religion." And Alayth said, "These two persons were among the hypocrites." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 94, narrated by Alayth. Aisha said, "The prophet entered upon me one day and said, 'O Aisha, I do not think that so-and-so and so-and-so know anything of our religion which we follow." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 95, narrated by Abu Huraira. I heard Allah's apostle saying, "All the sins of my followers will be forgiven except those of the mujahirin, those who commit a sin openly or disclose their sins to the people." An example of such disclosure is that a person commits a sin at night, and though Allah screens it from the public, then he comes in the morning and says, "Oh so-and-so, I did such and such evil deed yesterday," though he spent his night screened by his Lord, none knowing about his sin, and in the morning he removes Allah's screen from himself. Volume 8, Book 73, Number 96, narrated by Safwan bin Muhriz. A man asked Ibn Umar, "What did you hear Allah's apostle saying regarding an-najwa, secret talk between Allah and his believing worshipper on the Day of Judgment?" He said, "The prophet said, one of you will come close to his Lord till he will shelter him in his screen and say, 'Did you commit such and such sin?' He will say, 'Yes.' Then Allah will say, 'Did you commit such and such sin?' He will say, 'Yes.' So Allah will make him confess all his sins, and he will say, 'I screened them, your sins, for you in the world, and today I forgive them for you.'" Volume 8, Book 73, Number 97, narrated by Haritha bin Wahb al-Khuzai. The prophet said, "Shall I inform you about the people of paradise? They comprise every obscure, unimportant, humble person, and if he takes Allah's oath that he will do that thing, Allah will fulfill his oath by doing that. Shall I inform you about the people of the fire? They comprise every cruel, violent, proud, and conceited person." Anas bin Malik said, "Any of the female slaves of Medina could take hold of the hand of Allah's apostle and take him wherever she wished." Volume 8, Book 73, Number 98, narrated by Aisha, the wife of the prophet, that she was told that Abdullah bin Az-Zubair, on hearing that she was selling or giving something as a gift, said, "By Allah, if Aisha does not give up this, I will declare her incompetent to dispose of her wealth." I said, "Did he, Abdullah bin Az-Zubair, say so?" They, people, said yes. Aisha said, "I vow to Allah that I will never speak to Ibn Az-Zubair." When this desertion lasted long, Abdullah bin Az-Zubair sought intercession with her, but she said, "By Allah, I will not accept the intercession of anyone for him, and will not commit a sin by breaking my vow." When this state of affairs was prolonged on Ibn Az-Zubair, he felt it hard on him. He said to Al-Miswar bin Makrama and Abdur Rahman bin al-Aswad bin Abu Yaghuth, who were from the tribe of Bani Zara, "I beseech you by Allah to let me enter upon Aisha, for it is unlawful for her to vow to cut the relation with me." So Al-Miswar and Abdur Rahman, wrapping their sheets around themselves, asked Aisha's permission, saying, "Peace and Allah's mercy and blessings be upon you. Shall we come in?" Aisha said, "Come in." They said, "All of us?" She said, "Yes, come in all of you," not knowing that Ibn Az-Zubair was also with them. So when they entered, Ibn Az-Zubair entered the screened place and got hold of Aisha and started requesting her to excuse him, and wept. Al-Miswar and Abdur Rahman also started requesting her to speak to him and to accept his repentance. They said to her, "The Prophet forbade what you know of deserting, not speaking to your Muslim brethren, for it is unlawful for any Muslim not to talk to his brother for more than 3 nights, days." So when they increased their reminding her of the superiority of having good relation with kith and kin, and of excusing other sins, and brought her down to a critical situation, she started reminding them and wept, saying, "I have made a vow, and the question of vow is a difficult one." They, Al-Miswar and Abdur Rahman, persisted in their appeal till she spoke with Abdullah bin Az-Zubair, and she manumitted 40 slaves as an expiation for her vow. Later on, whenever she remembered her vow, she used to weep so much that her veil used to become wet with her tears. Volume 8, Book 73, number 99, narrated by Anas bin Malik. Allah's apostle said, "Do not hate one another, nor be jealous of one another, and do not desert one another, but O Allah's worshippers, be brothers, and it is unlawful for a Muslim to desert his brother Muslim and not to talk to him for more than 3 nights. Volume 8, Book 73, number 100, narrated by Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. Allah's apostle said, "It is not lawful for a man to desert his brother Muslim for more than 3 nights. It is unlawful for them that, when they meet, one of them turns his face away from the other, and the other turns his face from the former, and the better of the two will be the one who greets the other first." Volume 8, Book 73, number 101, narrated by Aisha. Allah's apostle said, "I know whether you are angry or pleased." I said, "How do you know that, Allah's apostle?" He said, "When you are pleased, you say, 'Yes, by the Lord of Muhammad,' but when you are angry, you say, 'No, by the Lord of Abraham.'" I said, "Yes, I do not leave, except your name." Volume 8, Book 73, number 102, narrated by Aisha, the wife of the Prophet. I do not remember my parents believing in any religion other than the religion of Islam, and are being visited by Allah's apostle in the morning and in the evening. One day, while we were sitting in the house of Abu Bakr, my father, at noon, someone said, "This is Allah's apostle coming at an hour at which he never used to visit us." Abu Bakr said, "There must be something very urgent that has brought him at this hour." The Prophet said, "I have been allowed to go out of Mecca to migrate." Volume 8, Book 73, number 103, narrated by Anas bin Malik. Allah's apostle visited a household among the Ansars, and he took a meal with them. When he intended to leave, he asked for a place in that house for him to pray, so a mat sprinkled with water was put, and he offered prayer over it, and invoked for Allah's blessing upon them, his hosts. Volume 8, Book 73, number 104, narrated by Abdullah. Umar saw a silken cloak over a man for sale, so he took it to the Prophet and said, "O Allah's apostle, buy this and wear it when the delegate come to you." He said, "The silk is worn by one who will have no share in the hereafter." Some time passed after this event, and then the Prophet sent a similar cloak to him. Umar brought that cloak back to the Prophet and said, "You have sent this to me, and you said about a similar one what you said." The Prophet said, "I have sent it to you so that you may get money by selling it." Because of this, Ibn Umar used to hate the silken markings on the garments. Volume 8, Book 73, number 105, narrated by Anas. When Abdurrahman came to us, the Prophet established a bond of brotherhood between him and Sa'd bin Arabi. Once the Prophet said, "As you, O Abdurrahman, have married, give a wedding banquet even if with 1 sheep." Volume 8, Book 73, number 106, narrated by Asim. I said to Anas bin Malik, "Did it reach you that the Prophet said, 'There is no treaty of brotherhood in Islam'?" Anas said, "The Prophet made a treaty of brotherhood between the Ansar and the Quraysh in my home." Volume 8, Book 73, number 107, narrated by Aisha. Rifa'a al-Qurazi divorced his wife irrevocably. That is, that divorce was the final. Later on, Abdur Rahman bin Az-Zubair married her after him. She came to the Prophet and said, "O Allah's apostle, I was Rifa'ah's wife and he divorced me thrice, and then I was married to Abdur Rahman bin Az-Zubair, who by Allah has nothing with him except something like this fringe, O Allah's apostle," showing a fringe she had taken from her covering sheet. Abu Bakr was sitting with the Prophet while Khalid ibn Said bin Alas was sitting at the gate of the room waiting for admission. Khalid started calling Abu Bakr, "O Abu Bakr, why don't you reprove this lady from what she is openly saying before Allah's apostle?" Allah's apostle did nothing except smiling and then said to the lady, "Perhaps you want to go back to Rifa?" "No, it is not possible, unless and until you enjoy the sexual relation with him, Abdur Rahman, and he enjoys the sexual relation with you." Volume 8, Book 73, number 108, narrated by Sa'd. Umar bin al-Khattab asked permission of Allah's apostle to see him while some Qurayshi women were sitting with him, and they were asking him to give them more financial support while raising their voices over the voice of the Prophet. When Umar asked permission to enter, all of them hurried to screen themselves. The Prophet admitted Umar and he entered, while the Prophet was smiling. Umar said, "May Allah always keep you smiling, O Allah's apostle. Let my father and mother be sacrificed for you." The Prophet said, "I am astonished at these women who were with me. As soon as they heard your voice, they hastened to screen themselves." Umar said, "You have more right that they should be afraid of you, O Allah's apostle." And then he, Umar, turned towards them and said, "O enemies of your souls, you are afraid of me and not of Allah's apostle." The women replied, "Yes, for you are sterner and harsher than Allah's apostle." Allah's apostle said, "O Ibn al-Khattab, by him in whose hands my life is, whenever Satan sees you taking away, he follows a way other than yours." Volume 8, Book 73, number 109, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. When Allah apostle was in Taif, trying to conquer it, he said to his companions, "Tomorrow we will return to Medina, if Allah wills." Some of the companions of Allah's apostle said, "We will not leave till we conquer it." The Prophet said, "Therefore, be ready to fight tomorrow." On the following day, they, Muslims, fought fiercely with the people of Taif and suffered many wounds. Then Allah's apostle said, "Tomorrow we will return to Medina, if Allah wills." His companions kept quiet this time. Allah's apostle then smiled. Volume 8, Book 73, number 110, narrated by Abu Hurairah. A man came to the Prophet and said, "I have been ruined, for I have had sexual relation with my wife in Ramadan while I was fasting." The Prophet said to him, "Manumit a slave." The man said, "I cannot afford that." The Prophet said, "Then fast for 2 successive months continuously." The man said, "I cannot do that." The Prophet said, "Then feed 60 poor persons." The man said, "I have nothing to feed them with." Then a big basket full of dates was brought to the Prophet. The Prophet said, "Where is the questioner? Go and give this in charity." The man said, "Shall I give this in charity to a poorer person than El? By Allah, there is no family in between these 2 mountains of Medina who are poorer than we." The Prophet then smiled till his premolar teeth became visible and said, "Then feed your family with it." Volume 8, Book 73, number 111, narrated by Anas bin Malik. While I was going along with Allah's apostle, who was wearing a Najrani bird sheet with a thick border, a Bedouin overtook the Prophet and pulled his rida sheet forcibly. I looked at the side of the shoulder of the Prophet and noticed that the edge of the rida had left a mark on it because of the violence of his pull. The Bedouin said, "O Muhammad, order for me some of Allah's property which you have." The Prophet turned towards him, smiled, and ordered that he be given something. Volume 8, Book 73, number 112, narrated by Jarir. The Prophet did not screen himself from me, had never prevented me from entering upon him, since I embraced Islam, and whenever he saw me, he would receive me with a smile. Once I told him that I could not sit firm on horses. He stroked me on the chest with his hand and said, "O Allah, make him firm and make him a guiding and a rightly guided man." Volume 8, Book 73, number 113, narrated by Zainab bint Salama Sulaim said, "O Allah's apostle, verily Allah is not shy of telling you the truth. Is it essential for a woman to take a bath after she had a wet dream, nocturnal sexual discharge?" He said, "Yes, if she notices discharge." On that Salama laughed and said, "Does a woman get a nocturnal sexual discharge?" He said, "How then does her son resemble her, his mother?" Volume 8, Book 73, number 114, narrated by Aisha. I never saw the Prophet laughing to an extent that one could see his palate, but he always used to smile only. Volume 8, Book 73, number 115, narrated by Anas. A man came to the Prophet on a Friday while he, the Prophet, was delivering a sermon at Medina and said, "There is lack of rain, so please invoke your Lord to bless us with the rain." The Prophet looked at the sky when no cloud could be detected. Then he invoked Allah for rain. Clouds started gathering together and it rained till the Medina valleys started flowing with water. It continued raining till the next Friday. Then that man, or some other man, stood up while the Prophet was delivering the Friday sermon and said, "We are drowned. Please invoke your Lord to withhold it, rain, from us." The Prophet smiled and said twice or thrice, "O Allah, please let it rain round about us and not upon us." The clouds started dispersing over Medina to the right and to the left, and it rained round about Medina and not upon Medina. Allah showed them, the people, the miracle of his Prophet and his response to his invocation. Volume 8, Book 73, number 116, narrated by Abdullah. The Prophet said, "Truthfulness leads to righteousness and righteousness leads to paradise. And a man keeps on telling the truth until he becomes a truthful person. Falsehood leads to al-fajur, that is wickedness, evil-doing, and al-fajur, wickedness, leads to the hell fire, and a man may keep on telling lies till he is written before Allah a liar." Volume 8, Book 73, number 117, narrated by Abu Hurairah. Allah's apostle said, "The signs of a hypocrite are three. Whenever he speaks, he tells a lie. And whenever he promises, he breaks his promise. And whenever he is entrusted, he betrays, proves to be dishonest." Volume 8, Book 73, number 118, narrated by Samura bin Jundub. The Prophet said, "I saw, in a dream, two men came to me." Then the Prophet narrated the story, saying, "They said, the person, the one whose cheek you saw being torn away, from the mouth to the ear, was a liar, and used to tell lies, and the people would report those lies on his authority till they spread all over the world. So he will be punished like that till the day of resurrection." Volume 8, Book 73, number 119, narrated by Hudayfa. From among the people, Ibn Abd greatly resembled Allah's apostles in solemn gait and good appearance of piety and in calmness and sobriety from the time he goes out of his house till he returns to it. But we do not know how he behaves with his family when he is alone with them. Volume 8, Book 73, number 120, narrated by Tariq. Abdullah said, "The best talk is Allah's book, Quran, and the best guidance is the guidance of Muhammad." Volume 8, Book 73, number 121, narrated by Abu Musa. The Prophet said, "None is more patient than Allah against the harmful saying. He hears from the people they ascribe children to him, yet he gives them health and supplies them with provision." Volume 8, Book 73, number 122, narrated by Abdullah. The Prophet divided and distributed something as he used to do for some of his distributions. A man from the Ansar said, "By Allah, in this division the pleasure of Allah has not been intended." I said, "I will definitely tell this to the Prophet." So I went to him while he was sitting with his companions and told him of it secretly. That was hard upon the Prophet, and the color of his face changed, and he became so angry that I wished I had not told him. The Prophet then said, "Moses was harmed with more than this, yet he remained patient." Volume 8, Book 73, number 123, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet did something and allowed his people to do it, but some people refrained from doing it. When the Prophet learned of that, he delivered a sermon, and after having sent praises to Allah, he said, "What is wrong with such people as refrain from doing a thing that I do? By Allah, I know Allah better than they, and I am more afraid of him than they." Volume 8, Book 73, number 124, narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. The Prophet was more shy than a virgin in her separate room, and if he saw a thing which he disliked, we would recognize that feeling in his face. Volume 8, Book 73, number 125, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, "If a man says to his brother, 'O kafir,' disbeliever, then surely one of them is such, that is, a kafir." Volume 8, Book 73, number 125, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's apostle said, "If anyone says to his brother, 'O misbeliever,' then surely one of them such." Volume 8, Book 73, number 126, narrated by Thabit bin ad-Dahak. The Prophet said, "Whoever swears by a religion other than Islam, that is, if he swears by saying that he is a non-Muslim in case he is telling a lie, then he is, as he says, if his oath is false, and whoever commits suicide with something will be punished with the same thing in the hell fire. And cursing a believer is like murdering him, and whoever accuses a believer of disbelief, then it is as if he had killed him." Volume 8, Book 73, number 127, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. Mu'ad bin Jabal used to pray with the Prophet and then go to lead his people in prayer. Once he led the people in prayer and recited Surat al-Baqarah. A man left the row of the praying people and offered light prayer separately and went away. When Mu'ad came to know about it, he said, that man, is a hypocrite." Later that man heard what Mu'ad said about him, so he came to the Prophet and said, "O Allah's apostle, we are people who work with our own hands and irrigate our farms with our camels. Last night Mu'ad led us in the night prayer and he recited Surah al-Baqarah, so I offered my prayer separately, and because of that he accused me of being a hypocrite." The Prophet called Mu'ad and said thrice, "O Mu'ad, you are putting the people to trials? Recite Wash Shamsi Waduhaha, 91, or Sabi Isma Rabbi Kalala, 87, or the like." Volume 8, Book 73, number 128, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, "Whoever amongst you swears, saying by error in his oath, by Al-Lat and Al-Uzza, then he should say, 'None has the right to be worshipped but Allah.' And whoever says to his companions, 'Come, let me gamble with you,' then he must give something in charity, as an expiation for such a sin." See Hadith, num 645. Volume 8, Book 73, number 129, narrated by Ibn Umar that he found Umar bin al-Khattab in a group of people and he was swearing by his father. So Allah's apostle called them, saying, "Verily, Allah forbids you to swear by your fathers. If one has to take an oath, he should swear by Allah or otherwise keep quiet." Volume 8, Book 73, number 130, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet entered upon me while there was a curtain having pictures of animals in the house. His face got red with anger, and then he got hold of the curtain and tore it into pieces. The prophet said, "Such people as paint these pictures will receive the severest punishment on the day of resurrection." Volume 8, Book 73, number 131, narrated by Abu Mas'ud. A man came to the prophet and said, "I keep away from the morning prayer only because such and such person prolongs the prayer when he leads us in it." The narrator added, "I had never seen Allah's apostle more furious in giving advice than he was on that day. He said, 'O people, there are some among you who make others dislike good deeds, cause the others to have aversion to congregational prayers. Beware, whoever among you leads the people in prayer should not prolong it, because among them there are the sick, the old, and the needy.'" See Hadith, number 670, Vol. 1, Volume 8, Book 73, number 132, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. While the prophet was praying, he saw sputum on the wall of the mosque in the direction of the Qibla, and so he scraped it off with his hand, and the sign of disgust was apparent from his face, and then said, "Whenever any one of you is in prayer, he should not spit in front of him, in prayer, because Allah is in front of him."